Television. I'm Sherry Burnson, and this is 9/11 Blueprint for Truth. I'm joined by Richard Gage.
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 Architect Richard Gage.
Mr. Richard Gage.
Internationally respected architect Richard Gage.
He's a member of the American Institute of Architects.
And he's the founder and former chief executive of
Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth.
That's all we want, isn't it, Richard? The truth.
Yeah, we're just looking for the truth.
Has done numerous interviews, has done numerous work on this, has done numerous talks on this, speeches all around the world.
He's causing a stir at the moment in the US, claiming the buildings were destroyed by controlled demolitions with explosives.
In the case of Building 7, it collapses straight down into its own footprint at free fall speed in the first 100 feet. It's dropping, as you can see, symmetrically, smoothly, at free fall speed in the first 100 feet, 2.5 seconds. This is uncanny. There's 40,000 tons of structural steel designed to resist this collapse.
And then we learned that 118 of these firefighters were talking about all these explosions.
There was a heavy-duty explosion. The whole building just collapsed on us inside the lobby.
Then we get to the lobby, it was this big explosion.
Second explosion.
We had that big explosion.
And another explosion.
There was some sort of explosive device.
Another explosion.
There was a secondary explosion.
And then all of a sudden, 3 big explosions.
We heard a very loud blast explosion.
It was as if they had detonated. They were planned to take down a building.
Down there is pools of molten iron.
What does that mean?
Several tons. Exactly. What is that doing there? The first responders see it. The structural engineers see it.
Get down below and see molten steel. Molten steel running down the channel rings.
Underground, it was still so hot that molten metal dripped down the sides of the wall.
This is extraordinary evidence, along with the chemical evidence of high-tech nanothermite composite explosives or incendiaries found in all the World Trade Center dust.
In the dust, we found what we characterize as unreacted thermitic material in the shape of some very tiny red-gray chips.
This is the emergency broadcast system. This is not a test. Repeat, this is not a test. This is our emergency destination. If exploded, when you
Podcast for the curious mind. I don't know what that means.
Broadcasting live from the Free Speech Studios. Deep within the city of Fountain. With over 4 years of satisfying the curious mind and looking damn sexy while doing it. Ladies and gentlemen, Phantom Fact Society.
With yet another beautiful intro from the Italian keeper. I am cussing with Hussing with Phantom Fact Society here with my co-host, my main honcho, Constant Mayhem, May Massacre.
Howdy.
Christopher May, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm good. It's hump day, all you Phantom Fackers.
Yes, it is. And serious subject today. You know, we have Richard Gage on. He's a architect, former architect, over 30 years, a member of the American Institute of Architects. And for a very long time, he has just kept telling everybody. And we saw that in that intro clip. He just keeps telling everybody over and over again that there are some major inconsistencies, what we were told about, 22 years ago.
Yeah, and this second time he's been with us, right? Second time. This is awesome.
So without further ado, Richard, welcome to the
Hey,
show.
doing. Hey, how you doing, Corey? Hi, Constant. Great to
How's it
see you
going?
guys again. Good, really good. Thanks. How are you guys doing?
Good, good. I mean, you have to be feeling, I mean, as you can see from those early clips, you know, you are just trying, especially in the news ones where, you know, you're on a news channel, you're trying to just condense it down to a few moments just to spark some attention. And, you know, I think you started this, what, 17 years ago?
18, yeah.
18 years ago, you started doing this. And now, I mean, everyone's talking about it, Richard. I mean, you've got at least over 50% of people talking about it. And all of X is convinced. You're so constant with your message that I got a message the other day saying that you're now the CIA operative setting the narrative.
Oh, that's interesting. I guess I'll take that as a compliment.
So,
We have the inside man.
You're the guy. So it has to, though. Have you seen more and more people start accepting that there are inconsistencies with 9/11?
Yes, I don't think it's up to 50%, but we'll be delighted that 25% of the people are aware that there's a problem with 9/11 and can cite Building 7 as its key piece of evidence that is alarming to most people, and we'll talk about that.
The reason we wanted to get you back on the show is we had seen that clip you had your team had posted on X. I was just gonna pull it up real quick and play it because it really caught our attention as far as this whole narrative of this former CIA agent. I forget her name, Sarah. But I'll play the clip.
Anybody doing anything?
No, and actually, Al Qaeda makes a joke out of the fact.
Oh, can you guys hear that?
Yeah.
Yep.
That they move the money we give to the Taliban to the camps that train the homeland attackers, right? So it's almost like an insider joke, like, yes, we are forcing America to fund their own attacks. So that is the plan too, that the money will go back to us and our government. And then that makes Americans also look at our government like it's an inside job. You knew it, right? And so Al-Qaeda is going to play that game, which is really interesting. Al-Qaeda found the Building 7 conspiracy stuff fascinating. And they have actually had discussions about how we could do ruses and bring in the Building 7 people to make them blame their government more. So they're actually even looking at our conspiracies and targeting those people for the homeland attack. So basically, those people almost back Al-Qaeda as revolutionaries and rebels and heroes against our government.
That's the biggest bunch of bullshit I've ever heard.
Behave, Richard.
Yeah, well, that's what we thought. We were like, "Oh, we gotta get a hold of Richard. We need to know the inside."
Out of all the conspiracies you could point out in America, and there's plenty of them, you know, not only did she choose 9/11, but she specifically chooses Tower 7.
Oh yeah, and we're going to show today. By the way, we're going to do a presentation here. We're going to show the details of Building 7. No one listening will agree with the official story ever again after hearing this and seeing it, and the Twin Towers as well. Controlled demolitions, all of them set up in advance. This Al-Qaeda had nothing to do with 9/11. They were manufactured, exalted, and made all of us afraid of by the CIA.
I'm all in, and I know we did an episode before, but that was like 2 years ago, and we are Americans, and so like I'm completely content with starting over and just going from the groundwork and building up on this thing. And you brought slides this time, which makes it sort of fun. Yeah. Okay, here, let me pull this up.
Well, we want people to take courage here, because for some people this is new information, right? We can't just assume that everybody knows about this or that everybody listening to your podcast is, familiar with this information. The people share this. We want everybody, all you guys, to share this information everywhere so that it will reach people who haven't become aware of the false flag of 9/11. A false flag, of course, is an operation that has been set up in advance by the real perpetrators to blame the patsies, in this case, the 9/11 hijackers and Al Qaeda. And they use that to manipulate people's emotions, to invade other countries. We'll talk about that, of course, Iraq and Afghanistan.
And just to sort of set the tone with 9/11, I find it fascinating. I'm an electrician by day, and so I work with a lot of guys in their young 20s, and they bring up 9/11 to me. They always find it interesting, and I always point them to Tower 7, because Tower 7 is the building that doesn't make sense. I feel like all of us watched, but they didn't. They didn't watch Tower 1 and 2 get hit. They didn't watch that live. Go ahead. Go ahead, Richard.
Those two towers. Yep, we're gonna watch it. We're gonna watch them come down. We're gonna dissect it 6 ways from Sunday in the hour plus that we have today. You guys will go away with a lot of information.
All right, what would you like to share with us first, then?
All right, so we've made a film called 9/11 Crime Scene to Courtroom about all this evidence. Episodes 1 and 2 are available now on the website, which is 911c2c.org. So we encourage you to take a look at that information, and also at richardgage911.org. And that's where you can find documentaries, presentations that I've done, and a new white paper that we have put up on all of this evidence, which is going to Congressman Kurt Weldon in a couple of days, to be taken to J.D. Vance, Tulsi Gabbard, and Pete Hegseth. So these are very important people now in our country as of a few days ago. And we have an interest on their parts in looking at the explosive demolition. In fact, Trump made a promise to declassify 9/11.
Yep.
In fact,
So did who was the guy that was talking on the Blaze? I'm gonna say Patel. Is it Patel?
Oh, Cash. Yeah.
Yeah, Cash Patel. Yeah, he was like 9 pages, the 9 missing pages of 9/11 or whatever it is.
Well, hopefully that'll be unredacted. There's 28 pages that have been largely redacted, and Trump promised to release those as well, along with the JFK files, which he's been releasing a lot of stuff. 100 executive orders. He's been doing some good work over there.
I get to it, Richard.
Pretty exciting. What?
He'll get to it. He's getting.
Can't do everything at once.
Yes. It
Would
would have been
gotta
nice
wipe
to
a
have-
couple stains off. Yep.
We hope he tells people about Building 7, because most Americans don't even know about it. Most architects and engineers know nothing about the third worst structural failure in modern history, Building 7. It seemed dwarfed next to the Twin Towers, right? The tallest buildings in the world at the time. But this building would be the tallest building in most of our states, 600 feet tall, 47 stories, about 100 meters from the North Tower, football field in length. And some of the debris came down from the North Tower and hit it. And I'm getting some feedback. If you guys could maybe turn down your microphone or use a headset, that would be helpful. But this tower came down, the Twin Towers came down in the morning, of course. About 7 hours later, we have the Building 7 came down. And there was a report on it by NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, who was tasked by Congress to explain these collapses to the American people. And here's what they had to explain. Building 7 at about 5:20 in the afternoon September 11th. The east penthouse comes down first in an isolated event 6 seconds earlier than this. What does that look like? Anybody seen that before? Yeah, it looks like a controlled demolition. And what did Sham Sunder of NIST tell us 7 years later? Here's the report that they finally put out after everybody who knew anything about this building's collapse forgot about it.
What we found was that uncontrolled building fires caused an extraordinary event. The collapse of World Trade Center 7 was primarily due to fire.
Fires. Okay, well, what fires? These fires brought that building down. This is going to get real interesting. They're few, they're small, and they're scattered. And we've never, in fact, lost a steel frame skyscraper due to fires. And these fires are burned out on the floor of interest of the initiation of collapse theory by NIST. So we have, they're burning out, they're moving on. In fact, they've moved on from this floor, floor 12, that NIST says, oh, there were fires raging on that floor. But that's their fire simulation, which directly contradicts all the evidence of the photographs and videos I just showed you, that the fires are burned out on that floor, in that location, around that column 79, which they say buckled and brought the rest of the building down. But look, we've had dozens and dozens and dozens of very hot, large, and long-lasting fires in these buildings. Not one of them has come down. These are steel frame, fire-protected structures, type 1 construction. And not since 9/11 either, by the way. Fully engulfed fires we have, but not one of them has come down. So what does it really look like? What might it have been? Let's put a series of controlled demolitions on the left, building 7 on the right. Is there any similarity? Is there enough similarity to warrant an investigation into the possible use of explosives, especially since fire, the official cause of this building's collapse, has never in history brought down a steel frame fire protected structure? So we have to look and see, well, what are the features of this controlled demolition? And we're going to walk through them one by one, beginning with, is there a sudden onset of destruction? Feature number 1. Let's look, listen to Dan Rather.
Now, here we're going to show you a videotape of the collapse itself. Describe that. Now we go to videotape, the collapse of this building.
It's amazing.
Amazing, incredible, pick your word. For the third time today, it's reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen too much on television before. A building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down.
What was that, Dan? Looks like it was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down. Well, Dan has never repeated those words after 9/11. In fact, we've never seen this building coming down, with like 2 exceptions, on mainstream television. This should have been the most studied structural failure ever. And yet I, one of 90,000 members of the American Institute of Architects, never received one bulletin on this catastrophic collapse. It was swept under the rug. And again, the report produced 7 years later. Does it have a straight down symmetrical collapse? Well, let's look from West Street. Yeah, pretty straight down, pretty symmetrical. How do you do that? You have to take out all the core columns at once within a fraction of a second of each other, followed about a second later by the perimeter columns. Any deviation in that pattern and the building will fall over. This is a science that structural engineers and controlled demolition experts work hard and long and decades to perfect. It is not easy. And these few small scattered fires cannot accomplish that level of precision. It doesn't happen. In fact, if you don't do it just right, this is what you get. Sometimes a controlled demolition that doesn't go down, it goes over. Or like this one, which stops altogether because the explosives don't continue. Somebody has to go back into that building and fix those duds. I don't know who that's going to be. But if a building is damaged on one side, it will fall over. And that's what we see in all kinds of naturally occurring collapses by whatever means, earthquakes, fire, etc. How fast is a building coming down? Feature number 4 is this analysis by David Chandler, which a physics teacher, which shows us that it comes down at free fall acceleration. Well, how fast is that? That's as fast as a bowling ball falling out of the sky, gaining additional velocity every second, faster and faster and faster. The definition of acceleration. Well, wait a minute. How can the building come down as fast as a bowling ball, which has no structure underneath it, when there's 40,000 tons of cold, hard, intact structure in this building, keeping it from collapsing? Where did the structure go? The structure is really quite amazing in this building. Well, NIST finally admits, after denying for 5-6 years that it came down at free fall, they were forced to admit it, publicly embarrassed in a press conference, that it did in fact come down as fast as a bowling ball. Did they acknowledge the obvious implications of this, that the structure instantly disappeared? No, they do not acknowledge that at all in their final report. So where did those columns go? We're gonna look at some evidence for that. But can these fires remove all of those columns instantly on each floor? No. So we have feature number 5, the total dismemberment of the structural steel frame. Indeed, we had a 47-story moment-resisting steel frame building where the columns and beams are rigidly welded one to another. But it falls like a house of cards into a pile 4 or 6 stories tall. Well, what happened to all of those rigidly welded beams and columns? Should have been a pile, if it was going to be a pile 20 stories tall, or it should have fallen over like naturally occurring collapses like these in earthquakes, where the columns and beams are not severed one from another. The concrete is not pulverized to a fine powder, as we'll see. And can these skyscrapers accomplish what we've seen? These fires cannot. And so we have to ask ourselves, what can? Well, feature number 7, are there sounds of explosions? Let's listen to a few of these, because NIST says there were no witnesses of explosions. Well, there were dozens. Here's just a few. This is Daryl, a medical student.
We were watching the building actually because it was on fire. The bottom floors of the building were on fire, and we heard this sound that sounded like a clap of thunder. Turned around, we were shocked to see that the building was it looked like there was a shock wave ripping through the building, and the windows all busted out, and it was horrifying. And then about a second later, the bottom floor caves out, and the building followed after that, and we saw the building crash down all the way to the ground. We were in shock, and then the worst part.
Well, that's interesting. The building crashes all the way down to the ground after a sound of a clap of thunder. How about Kevin McPadden, former Air Force medic?
You heard explosions, like boom. It's like a distinct sound. It's not like when in compression, like boom, 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 like floors that were dropping and collapsing. This was boom, and like you felt a rumble in the ground, like almost like you wanted to grab onto something. That, to me, I knew that was an explosion. There was no doubt in my mind.
Or this gentleman, Bill Rosati.
I was standing like 2 blocks away, and all of a sudden I just seen a big flash, and then I seen the building coming down, and I just seen people just running everywhere. Chaotic, like.
A big flash this time. Okay, before the building falls. How about Captain Richard Patterson of the FDNY, first responder?
1-7 let go as well, and was a series of concussive explosions.
And this gentleman, Patrick Dillon, first responder.
I remember feeling that
like it was like freight trains underneath the earth, shaking the earth, even shaking me. That's when we all saw Building 7 crumple in the middle, like way up at the top. It buckled and then dropped.
And this gentleman, Richard Rotans, who was the deputy director of New York's emergency management, he went inside the building in the early afternoon and saw that the building was quite damaged already.
And then he had to go into that building to assess it.
You could hear the building creak above us. You could hear things fall. You could hear the fire burning. You could see columns just hanging from the upper floors, gaping holes in the floors up above us. There was an elevator car that was blown out of its shaft and it was down the hall.
What can blow an elevator car out of its shaft down the hall? He later clarified 30 or 40 feet down the hall. What can do that? An explosion inside the building. Explosions which were battering these two gentlemen inside the building. Also, that morning, the whole building had been evacuated about after the first plane hit the tower, Twin Tower, and after the second plane hit the tower, but before the towers come down. This is their experience.
When we got to the 8th floor, I started walking to one side of the building. That side of the building was gone. The first explosion I heard when I was on the stairwell landing, when we made it down to the 6th floor. Then we made it back to the 8th floor. I heard some more explosions.
What's the sound?
Like a boom, like an explosion.
More than one?
Yes. We started walking down the stairs. We made it to the 8th floor. Big explosion. Blew us back into the 8th floor. When we get outside, a police officer comes to me and says, you have to run. We have more information of bombs, so you have to run.
Well, information of bombs now also, in addition to what they already experienced inside the building, bombs like this heard by these FDNY first responders.
Yeah, here's one of the guys. He can tell you I'm okay. All right. Here, hold on. You want to call your mother or something?
This was heard in the late morning in the vicinity of Building 7. NIST says there's no witnesses of explosion. You just heard a bunch of them. So is NIST telling the truth? Well, let's look at the examples of foreknowledge, because if this building was planned to go down in advance, people would be aware of it. People like Chief Nick Viscani, for instance, who says, we're moving the command post over this way. That building's coming down. And here goes 7. And here's Chief Pete Hayden.
Well, we had our special operations people set up surveying instruments to monitor and see if there was any movement in the building. We're concerned of the possibility of collapse of the building. And we had a discussion with one particular engineer there, and we asked him if we allowed it to burn, could we anticipate a collapse, and if so, how soon? And it turned out that he was pretty much right on the money, that he said in its current state you have about 5 hours.
5 hours. In its current state, he says at noon, you have about 5 hours. Well, sure enough, it comes down 5 hours later at about 5 o'clock. So how could they have known that the building was going to come down at 5 o'clock without foreknowledge of the building coming down? This prediction could only have been made with such foreknowledge, because no other steel frame fire protected structure has collapsed due to fire. And this was normal office fires, we're told, brought this building down. Well, how about these mysterious construction workers hearing an explosion over their shoulder in the vicinity of Building 7, looking back at the building and then looking straight into the CNN camera and saying this.
We are walking back. There's a building about to blow up. Flame, debris coming down.
What? The building is about to blow up, flame and debris coming down. So now the building's not just going to come down, it's going to blow up. So How did they get that information? And what did Kevin McPadden experience before he heard the explosions of the building? He and others were held back several blocks away from the building because they were expecting it to come down. And as you'll see, they didn't even allow the firefighters into the building to fight the fires. So Kevin McPadden is listening to a radio held in the hands of a Red Cross worker, and he hears this.
At the last few seconds, he took his hand off, and you heard 3, 2, 1.
What? Do fires bring buildings down to countdowns? What's really going on here? And how did the BBC know that it was going to collapse?
Now, more on the latest building collapse in New York. You might have heard a few moments ago, I was talking about the Salomon Brothers building collapsing. And indeed it has. Apparently that's only a few hundred yards away from where the World Trade Center towers were. And it seems that this was not a result of a new attack. It was because the building had been weakened during this morning's attacks. We'll probably find out more now about that from our correspondent, Jane Stanley. Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
Well, only really what you already know. Details are very, very sketchy.
Sketchy indeed. The building doesn't collapse for another 23 minutes. They apologize for this grievous error, citing the confusing events of the day. What, does that make them psychic? How can they possibly know what's going on here? Did they get a script in advance that they read too soon? Well, how about CNN? They announced it at 11:07 that morning.
In New York, Alan Dodds Frank joins us on the phone in Lower Manhattan. Alan?
Aaron, just 2 or 3 minutes ago, there was yet another collapse or explosion. I'm now out of sight. A Good Samaritan has taken me in on Duane Street. But at 11:15, there was another collapse or explosion following the 10:30 collapse of the second tower. And a firefighter who rushed by us estimated that 50 stories went down. The street filled with smoke. It's like a forest fire roaring down a canyon. Now, as I think...
Wait a minute. If there was no other tall building that went down, there was no other building that completely collapsed. There were some badly damaged buildings when the towers went down that they damaged, but they didn't collapse. The towers did, but not these other buildings. There was no 50-story building. They're talking about building 7, a 50-story, 47-story building. Had that building come down at that time, we would not have any videos of it because the entire lower Manhattan was filled with this incredible dust cloud released when the Twin Towers went down. So we got to ask ourselves, what's really happening here? This is not what they told us. Well, we get another clue from the developer of Building 7 and the eventual owner of the Twin Towers. He's interviewed about a year later on PBS America Rebuilds. This is what he says.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. And I said, you know, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull. And then we watched the building collapse.
Whoa, wait a minute. They made the decision to pull. They is the fire department he's talking about. They don't make decisions to pull buildings. Pull it is a term used in the controlled demolition industry. In fact, they were told not to fight the fire. They weren't even in the building. They were not allowed into the building to fight this fire. They were kept away, as a matter of fact, as you'll see, by men with guns. And so this is really quite incredible. Even FEMA and NIST report no firefighting operations. So there was nobody to pull out of the building. And so they say, well, we had to abandon our efforts to, not our efforts, but our intention to fight the fire because there was no water supply to that building. Didn't have water. Well, wait a minute. We show right here that Chief Pete Hayden says, yes, my recollection was that there was water available. And there's lots of evidence for water available to fight this fire. As a matter of fact, the pressure was tested on 9/11 in all of the different hydrants, and they found that the pressure was adequate. So we go to the experts like this one, a top European controlled demolition expert in the Netherlands.
Danny Jowenko is the expert on this in Europe. What did he say?
Dit is controlled demolition. Zeker weten. Zeker weten. Er is nagesprongen. Dit is in opdracht gebeurd. Dit heeft een team gedaan van experts.
Okay, a team of experts did this. Professional work without a doubt, he says. Well, so does essentially structural engineer Kamal Obeid and 36 other structural engineers signed on to the petition demanding a new investigation among the 3,600 architects and engineers who have signed this petition, staking their reputation. He says a localized failure in a steel frame building like WTC7 cannot cause a catastrophic collapse like a house of cards without a simultaneous and patterned loss of several of its columns at key locations within the building. Does that sound like something that fire does? No. And that's what caught the attention of Professor Leroy Halsey, one of the top forensic structural engineers in the country at the University of Alaska in Fairbanks, who did a structural reevaluation of this building, modeling all of the members and the fire in the detailed modeling that NIST was said they were going to do, but failed miserably. They first found that columns 79, 80, and 81 didn't fail, but if they did fail, the building would have tipped over. So they modeled that, and it didn't go straight down like the video you saw. It tips over like you would imagine if columns on one side of the building failed, 79, 80, and 81. So they took out all the columns at once, and sure enough, they got the building to collapse at free fall symmetrically, just like the video you see in the middle. So the University of Alaska on the left actually looks like the collapse, whereas NIST's computer model, which they use to try to show that they've proven the controlled demolition by fires, fails miserably. You can see that they have to release 400 structural steel connections every second to get the video on the left side to collapse. And then the building even begins to tip over. They can't even back engineer their computer model to get it to behave like the video, and yet they claim that it does. So we have huge problems with the NIST report, especially given the findings of the UAF report, University of Alaska in Fairbanks. Fire did not cause the collapse of this building. The temperatures was not hot enough to cause the weakening of the steel framing even. Thermal expansion did not result in a loss of support for the beams and girders. In fact, the collapse of WTC7 was a global failure involving the near simultaneous failure of all the columns in the building, not a progressive collapse as claimed by NIST. So they've completely pulled the rug out from underneath NIST. And we have to ask ourselves, what could have brought this building down? The University of Alaska didn't go further than this because they're structural engineers. But we can look at the evidence at the site and determine that, in fact, there's evidence of extreme heat, not accountable for in the official narrative whatsoever. In fact, it's given to us by FEMA in their Appendix C of the May 2002 Building Performance Assessment Team report. They did a metallurgical examination of the steel. What did they find? Never before observed eutectic reactions, intergranular melting, capable of turning a solid steel girder into Swiss cheese, like we see here in this piece of World Trade Center 7 steel, the end of a beam, one of the very few that was saved. Rapid oxidation and sulfidation. Liquid iron, that's molten iron, by the way, and sulfur formed during this hot corrosion attack on the steel. Well, this is getting very interesting. The New York Times said perhaps the deepest mystery uncovered in the investigation that was. But it's completely omitted in the NIST report when they took over the investigation in 2002. They threw out this metallurgical examination. It didn't comport with their theory. But the author of the FEMA report even identifies steel members in the debris pile that appear to have been partly evaporated in extraordinarily high temperatures. Fire protection engineer Jonathan Barnett says, okay, well, there's a problem here. How do you evaporate steel? It takes 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit to do that. Office fires only get to be about a quarter of those temperatures typically. So here's the steel that Abul Hassan Nastani Azal, a structural engineer, had a National Foundation grant to study. This is World Trade Center 7 beam that he's studying, partly evaporated. Again, 4,000 degrees. Even with the crab claw excavators that are pulling materials out of the pile, dripping with molten metal, yellow and white hot, indicating temperatures that are 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit, more than 2 or 3 times what office fires could ever get to. And this is much, much later, after most of the fires were burned out. This material is still going. Could it be from jet fuel? No, this building wasn't hit by an airplane. And even at the Twin Towers, the jet fuel only burns about 600 degrees Fahrenheit, about less than a quarter of the temperature of those temperatures that we just saw. So we have a huge problem. Fires only get to be at the worst, the very worst case. And this is dreamland, conservative, worst case figures, 1,000 degrees Celsius, about 1,800 Fahrenheit, which can't even match the temperatures that we're seeing in the pile. Well, what can?
An incendiary used by the military, thermite is a compound of iron oxide and aluminum, which when ignited sustains an extreme heat reaction, creating molten iron. In just 2 seconds, thermite can reach temperatures over 4,500 degrees Fahrenheit, quite enough to liquefy steel. We know that open-air fires cannot burn hot enough to melt steel, but metal had melted at the base of the towers. Appendix C of the FEMA report describes sulfur residues on the World Trade Center steel. The New York Times called this the deepest mystery of all. Sulfur slightly lowers the melting point of iron, and iron oxide and iron sulfide had formed on the surface of the structural steel. Sulfur used with thermite is called thermate, producing even faster results.
Well, maybe we're getting somewhere here, because if thermite were used, it would explain those incredible temperatures up to 4,000 degrees. It would explain the presence of sulfur. Sulfur is added to thermite to become thermate, much more effective at cutting through steel. There's no other rational accounting for the presence of sulfur. It would also explain the presence of elemental iron released, a byproduct of thermite, one of the 2 byproducts, aluminum oxide ash being the other. We'll come to that. So let's look in the dust for evidence of thermite. It's actually given to us by the U.S. Geological Survey, who did hundreds and hundreds of samples, studies of samples, and produced the documented results in 2005. And in 2005, we have this particle atlas of the World Trade Center dust in which they find what? Billions of previously molten iron microspheres. Let's unpack that. Previously molten because they're in a spherical shape, so we know they were molten, so that we know that they achieved temperatures capable of melting steel, which is above 2,800 to 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Elemental iron, the byproduct of thermite, molten iron, not steel, but elemental iron. And spherical iron and something else. But they're used as a signature component. They're so ubiquitous in all the samples. They don't know what they are, where they came from. But the EPA says this is a signature component, and it distinguishes the World Trade Center dust from common office building dust. In other words, it isn't even World Trade Center dust unless it has all these unknown origin, previously molten iron microspheres. So it turns out that there's up to 4 tons of this stuff altogether. By extrapolation, you can figure it out. 6% of some of these samples are previously molten iron microspheres. So where did they come from? Well, RJ Lee Group does studies also in the dust. They said, hey, we don't know what they are, but they're formed. We know what they are. We don't know how they got there, but we know that they're formed during the World Trade Center destruction. And this is an independent environmental consulting firm corroborating the results of the U.S. Geological Survey. Well, where do previously molten iron microspheres come from? Let's do an experiment. Experiment is the arbiter of competing hypotheses. Let's do one. Let's light some thermite. What do we get? Looks like sparks, thousands of them, slowing it down halfway, but they're molten iron spheres. They're spherical because liquids, which are aerosolized, form themselves by surface tension into spheres. In fact, there's other spheres as well. Melted molybdenum. What's that? Well, that's a metal in the periodic table, MO, and it melted. And the thing about it is it has a higher melting point, 4,700 degrees Fahrenheit. This proves there were temperatures during the destruction of the towers at 4,700 degrees Fahrenheit. They have no idea how anything could get this hot. We saw jet fuel doesn't get 1/6 of this hot, these temperatures. And so we have evaporated lead. How do we know that? That takes 3,200 degrees. The presence of lead oxide on the surface of the mineral wool indicates the existence of extremely high temperatures during the collapse, which caused metallic lead to volatilize, oxidize, and finally condense on the surface of the mineral wool. More evidence of extreme temperatures, unaccountable in the official narrative. The tops of these cars are toasted. Could this be what explains that? The falling of liquid molten iron droplets. That's pretty darn interesting. How does that happen? Is there any other accounting for this phenomena in the official narrative whatsoever? No. And the clouds were very hot. The dust clouds hit us. Then it got real hot. Felt like it was going to light up almost, says this first responder. And a wave, a solid black wave of heat threw me down the block, says this news reporter. When I was running, some hot stuff went down my back because I didn't have time to put my coat on. And I had some, well, I guess it was 1st and 2nd degree burns on my back. So this is direct evidence of extreme heat, unaccountable for in the official narrative. And then we were engulfed in the smoke, which was horrendous. One thing I remember, it was hot. The smoke was hot, and that scared me. I remember making it to the tunnel, and it was this incredible amount of wind, debris, heat, says this firefighter, Brian Fitzpatrick. A huge, huge blast of hot wind, gusting and smoke and dust, all kinds of debris hit me, says this firefighter. The super hot wind blew, and it just got dark as night. and you couldn't breathe, says Todd Heaney, firefighter. So we've had evidence of ignited thermite, molten iron being the residue of ignited thermite. Is there any evidence of unignited thermite in the World Trade Center dust? Yeah. Professor Niels Harrit from Copenhagen, PhD, says leads a team of 8 international scientists studying these dust samples, 7 of them. And here are 4 samples, and they find these curious red-gray chips. They thought they were paint at first. Looks like primer paint, right? But they're red on one side, gray on the other. But curiously, they're attracted by a magnet. Unlike primer paint, for instance, which does have iron in it, but it's not attracted to a magnet. So they get real curious and they do some analysis of the red layer. What do they find? Aluminum and iron oxide, the ingredients of thermite, along with manganese, which is also another ingredient. So, okay, this is curious. What is thermite doing in these paint chips independently collected from people who heard about their work and provided these samples to them? They get real curious and zoom in 50,000 times with an electron microscope. What do they find? Iron oxide particles and aluminum platelets, the ingredients of unignited thermite. They're 1,000 times smaller than the diameter of a human hair. This is the nano particles, nano engineering. They're set in a matrix of oxygen, silica, carbon, organic material. Organic material is used in TNT and C4 to expand rapidly in gases and knock things over. That's how explosives work. Whereas incendiaries like thermite work by burning things up. Thermite is an incendiary used by the military to cut through steel like a hot knife through butter. So they do some literature review. They find, oh, this stuff exists already. It's called super thermite in the peer-reviewed literature. Explosive composites based on thermite reactions whose fuel and oxidizer constituents are intimately mixed on the nanometer-sized scale. Well, this came out in 2001, before 9/11. This stuff was developed. You see, when you get these particles so small at the nanoscale, their surface volume increases exponentially. And you have engineered an incendiary to become more explosive because the chemical reaction can transfer virtually instantaneously. So the peer-reviewed literature shows that when they ignite these small particles, they produce a thermitic reaction at about 420, 430 degrees Celsius. Well, this is exactly what all the samples did that were collected of these red-gray chips by this international team. They ignite. More interestingly, and that proves that it's an exothermic reaction right there, a lot of energy in a burst. And what do you imagine that they produce when they ignite? Molten iron microspheres with the same chemical reaction, chemical signature as the molten iron microspheres found and studied in all the World Trade Center dust by the U.S. Geological Survey and R.J. Lee. So we know exactly where all those previously unknown molten iron microspheres came from. They came from these red-gray chips. As if we didn't know, they're found attached to partially ignited red-gray chips, as you see here and here. You know, this stuff is not made in a cave in Afghanistan. It's made only in the most advanced defense contracting laboratories. And so all of this is produced in a peer-reviewed paper in the Bentham Open Chemical Physics Journal in 2009. The red layer of the red-grade chips we've discovered in the dust is active, unreacted thermitic material incorporating nanotechnology. It's a highly energetic pyrotechnic or explosive material. This is a damning indictment of the NIST report also, and one of the 10 key characteristics, some of which are typical, many of which are very atypical, of controlled demolition. The use of incendiaries is not common in the controlled demolition industry, but incendiaries have a softer ignition signature. The audio signature is not a big bang like you see in typical controlled demolitions, but there are patented devices which release, which were patented prior to 9/11, in which thermite is used as the source, ejecting liquid molten iron in milliseconds, cutting through steel like a hot knife through butter. So we have none of this evidence is accountable in the official narrative. They don't talk about it at all, as a matter of fact, but all of it is evidence of explosives with incendiaries or high energy explosives. None of it can be accountable for by fire. Not any one of these, let alone all 10 of these features. So we know what this is with additional circumstantial corroborative evidence and testimony. This is proof of controlled demolition, a body of proof that has convinced 3,600 architects and engineers to sign on to the petition demanding a new investigation, many of which appear in the film series, which you can watch. We're producing about one a month, and we've got 2 produced. The 9/11 Crime Scene to Courtroom, an unprecedented film series taking the hard evidence of 9/11 crimes to court, where Mick Harrison, the litigation director for the Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry, and along with myself and our team of experts, are appearing in the boardroom giving this evidence to a special grand jury investigation. And we encourage you to take a look at it. Here's the trailer.
No matter how improbable the conclusion may appear, when you've eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth.
We're bringing alive in the film the 60 exhibits of the 9/11 WTC evidence contained in the Lawyers Committee grand jury petition that have already been submitted to the U.S. Attorney in Manhattan to present to a special criminal jury.
This historic investigation is ongoing, and there's a role for you in it. Yes, you can help us bring the real perpetrators to justice.
Through this film series, we're bringing together 24 experts in their fields.
They ignored any scenario involving incendiaries.
Demolition work, you're going to set charges on each floor.
The building could not have been brought down by office fires.
In other words, all of the interior columns over 8 stories came down, were basically lost at once.
I could make out what looked like from a science fiction movie, molten lava, okay?
And he paused and said, that'll be coming down around 5 o'clock.
We'll be filming these evidence presentations, not only for our filings with the grand jury, also as presentations to each of you.
We're inviting you to serve as virtual grand jury during each episode. So you can watch episode 1 and 2 now at richardgage911.org or 911c2c.org. And we've included, or we will be including in this series, a detailed dive into the Twin Towers evidence as well. Because if Building 7 was a controlled demolition, a classic implosion, we have to ask ourselves, what are we looking at here with the Twin Towers? Because it's a very explosive event, very different from Building 7.
Richard, before we talk about the Twin Towers, I was curious. Can you go back to that picture? I think it was page 164 or slide 164 of the twisted metal on
Sure.
Building 7, because I didn't get a chance to get a good look at that, and I sort of just wanted to. Yeah.
Now, we have a lot of twisted metal evidence of. This is not twisted. It is certainly partly evaporated, which fires cannot melt steel. Again, fires are only 1,000 degrees typically, sometimes a little more than that, but less than 2 or 3 times the temperatures of that required to melt steel, 3,000 degrees. So this gentleman is studying the steel. Did you have another question there?
Yeah, no, I was just sort of curious because this unique to Building 7 as far
This steel is from Building 7. There's also steel for the Twin Towers that we show in our longer presentations that is melted and corroded, and the hot sulfur corrosion attack on that steel too.
Do we know who owned, or not who owned that building, but who was like leasing that building?
Yeah, we listened to the owner, Larry Silverstein, who talked about pulling Building 7.
But who is inhabiting it though? Like, I mean,
the tenants.
Yes.
Yeah, we have in Building 7, the IRS, the CIA, the Department of Defense, the Securities and Exchange Commission, which lost thousands of files related to hundreds of cases they were actively pursuing against Wall Street companies like Enron and WorldCom.
Yeah, I thought there was a big thing on like, I don't know if it was billions or millions of dollars that suddenly went missing, like before the attack, or just a bunch of weird things that just vanished before that building. It seemed to be taken out.
Yeah, we can discuss that at the end of the presentation. We can answer all of those questions that haven't been asked yet.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just sort of curious as to who was living in Building 7, the convenience of that. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, well, it is an interesting speculation because, for instance, the Emergency Operations Center was up on the 23rd floor. And bless you. And we have... that's where Barry Jennings and Mayor Giuliani's attorney, Michael Hess, had gone up to, not realizing that the whole building had been evacuated earlier. They were late to a meeting, and then nobody was there when they got there. And that may have been the site that was used for planning this operation. It's a very highly secure site with all kinds of high tech for the time. So a lot of people think that that's one of the reasons they took Building 7 down, is because that would get rid of all of that evidence on the 23rd floor.
Was there a terrorism insurance policy on that building as well?
Yeah, Silverstein acquired the Twin Towers as he had already developed Building 7. And this 99-year lease went through, moving from public hands into private. Port Authority to Silverstein and Company. They acquired this just 6 weeks prior to 9/11, and then put massive terrorist insurance on it, which was never on the building before, that level of insurance.
Just really lucky, this guy.
Oh, that's why they call him Lucky Larry. Yeah. Well, I have to ask you now, why are these freely flying structural steel sections ejected 600 feet? And why are they trailing thick white smoke clouds? Steel is not flammable in office fire conditions or jet fuel again. What's causing all of this smoke trailing these steel sections? Well, one of the byproducts of thermite is aluminum oxide ash. You see that here. Lots of thick white smoke. So it gets very interesting. So we're going to look again, see if the Twin Towers exhibit any of the features of controlled demolition, beginning with the first feature, a sudden onset of the building. Let's look at the North Tower. It's standing still at rest, and all of a sudden, it's in uniform downward smooth motion, falling without jolt, without hesitation, without impact. We're told that this upper section drives the rest of the building down to the ground. But what we're seeing is that, in fact, it doesn't even halt when it hits the cool, hard, intact steel below. Yeah, the theory is that the upper section drove the rest of the building down to the ground and then destroyed itself. This is the crush down, crush up theory by Zdeněk Bezant, which remains NIST's theory for the column failure theory. It was put out in just 2 days after 9/11 by this mathematical wizard, Zdeněk Bezant from Northwestern University in Chicago. And everybody else was freaked out about what's happening in our country. Who's attacking us? When's the next one coming? Not this guy. Apparently he's in his den cranking away on the most sophisticated mathematical paper ever produced, which became NIST's backup for their theory. Well, wait a minute. There's a few things wrong here. What happens when two bodies collide? There's an equal and opposite destructive force. Run a Volkswagen into a Mack truck. Who wins? The Mack truck, right? The Volkswagen might dent the bumper, but it's going to be completely demolished. Does it matter if we drop the Volkswagen onto the Mack truck? No. The top and weaker and lighter part of the structure cannot possibly destroy the heavier, cold, hard, intact steel all the way down the building. And it gets heavier and heavier and heavier. Oh, that's interesting. As you go down the building, the lightest part of the steel is, in fact, at the top. It's 52 inches by 22 inches of solid steel by the time you get down to the bottom. The top part, these I-beams are only 3/8 inch, maybe 5/8 inch thick, and a foot at the most in size. So we have to look deeper here and find out what's really going on. Is the top part driving the rest of the building down to the ground? I'll make it easier for you. Look at the lower red line. Is it moving down? Is the top part crushing the bottom part, or is the top part being destroyed? It's telescoping down as right before our very eyes. We can see that it's not pushing the rest of the building down to the ground. In the first couple of seconds, it's already being destroyed. If it were there, we would see it driving the rest of the building down to the ground. But none of the photos, none of the videos show any such dynamic. In fact, if it were true, it would have crushed these few remaining core columns standing 1,000 feet in the air 6 seconds after the tower has been destroyed around it by explosives, not by this pile driver. It wouldn't be there otherwise. So what are we really looking at? I mean, look at one of these is a volcanic eruption in the Tongan Sea. Can you tell which one? It's hard, isn't it? These look very similar. We're talking about major eruption, explosively charged, with solid molten objects trailing thick white smoke clouds in each case. On the left, World Trade Center 1. On the right, the volcanic eruption. So we have to ask ourselves, if it's not crushing the building below, and it can't be, because that diagram did not account for these few remaining columns, probably standing 800 feet tall to 900 feet tall. So No, the building is blowing out and around outside of these few remaining core columns. But all of this is ignored by the NIST report, which had $20 million and 2 years in the case of World Trade Center 1 and 2. And they were tasked with explaining the collapses to the American people. But they stopped at the initiation of collapse. They had their own agenda on footnote number 13 on page 82. They document that that their analysis only goes up to the initiation of collapse. It should have been called the final report on the collapse initiation. But they completely omitted any analysis of the capability of the structure below the plane impacts to withstand this weight up above, which we're told crushed the building. So we go to feature number 2 and find out what could have been really going on here. Well, we have a clue from the oral histories of the first responders, producing 12,000 pages of testimony, which were recorded just within a month after 9/11. 156 of them are witnesses of explosions. There are 500 in all. Professor Graham McQueen read all 12,000 pages of testimony. Let's look at a few of these. We felt the ground shake. You could see the towers sway, and then it just came down. You're going to hear this order of events again and again. They're feeling, they're seeing, they're hearing explosions often before the tower comes down. Well, that's in direct violation of the official narrative, which says that any of those sounds that you heard were the sound of the building collapsing. No, listen. All of a sudden, the ground just started shaking. I felt like a train running under my feet. The next thing we know, we look up and the tower is collapsing. It shook my bones. Shortly before the first tower came down, I remember feeling the ground shaking. I heard a terrible noise, and then debris just started flying everywhere. I saw a flash at the lower level of the building. You know, like when they demolish a building. This is what the assistant fire commissioner says. Now, NIST said that they interviewed 116 firefighters. Well, they missed every one of the ones that we're talking about, or specifically avoided them. With each popping sound, initially an orange, and then a red flash came out of the building. And then it would just go all around the building on both sides. I saw a number of brief light sources being emitted from inside the building between floors 10 and 15. He saw about 6 of these brief flashes accompanied by a crackling sound before the tower collapsed. I saw low-level flashes. I saw flash, and then it looked like the building came down. An explosion appeared at the very top. Simultaneously, from all 4 sides, materials shot out horizontally, and then there seemed to be a momentary delay before you could see the beginning of the collapse. How specific does this fire chief need to be? But his testimony, nor any of these others, were included in the NIST report. There was an explosion in the South Tower, one floor under another. It hit about the 5th floor. I figured it was a bomb because it looked like a synchronized, deliberate kind of thing. Seemed like on television when they blow up these buildings. Seemed like it was going all the way around, like a belt. All these explosions. The building was blowing out on all 4 sides. We actually heard the pops, you know? You heard the pops of the building. I thought the terrorists planted explosives somewhere in the building. That's how loud it was. A crackling explosive. Another loud boom at the upper floors. Then there was a series of smaller explosions which appeared to go completely around the building at the upper floors. Another loud earth-shattering blast with a large fireball that blew out more debris. The lower level of the building, you know, like when they demolish a building, that's what I thought I saw. Do you see any flashes? I said, yes. I thought it was just me. He said, no. I saw them too. Everybody, I think, at that point still thought these things were blown up. So I was fully expecting anything else to blow up. You were there when the planes hit? No, I was there when the building exploded. You mean when it fell down? No, when it exploded. It's pretty clear what he's talking about here. Well, let's look at feature number 3. Does the building come straight down? Well, it starts to tip over on the south tower. Actually, it's tipping at about 22 degrees. So we have asymmetrical loading on the building below by this section which is falling off. We have asymmetrical damage from the fires and the plane impacts. How in the world do we get complete symmetrical damage all the way down all 4 sides of the building? No, something far more precision is going on here than a natural collapse. Let's zoom in the corner of this building further down. What are we seeing? I'm seeing independent explosions on this leading wave of this destruction, about a dozen in this looped video, which could only be pre-placed relatively small, but thousands of them, explosives at the perimeter of the building. So we then ask ourselves, okay, are there any other different types of explosions like squibs or isolated explosive ejections? Yeah, we have them 20 stories down. There's 40 stories down below the zone of destruction, which is up above. So how can a natural collapse 60 stories down below what we're told is a natural collapse, which can't produce all of this phenomena so far down? These must be mistimed explosions, which are expelling solid building components along with incredible smoke and debris. This is the south tower. On the left side, you see a dozen of these squibs or isolated explosive ejections occurring almost simultaneously, destroying the inside of this tower, which is probably why it doesn't end up falling onto the ground below in one piece, because the interior of it is being disintegrated by these explosions. How fast is the building coming down? Feature number 5. Well, again, physics teacher David Chandler shows us that it comes down at about 64% of the acceleration of gravity or free fall. How fast is that? Again, that's as fast, almost in this case, as a bowling ball falling out of the sky. It's still accelerating. It's not decelerating when it meets the cold, hard steel below. There's more steel in the facade of this building than glass. It's an incredible exoskeleton, very unusual in skyscrapers. So there's a lot more steel here. In fact, 20 times as necessary to carry the live loads of the building, because this is how they were afraid. This is the tallest building in the world. They had to engineer it to withstand hurricanes. And because this is a big sail, 110 feet in the air. So they made a Varendeel truss system out of the perimeter steel system structure. And it doesn't tip over very easily, but it does oscillate about 11 feet at the very top in very high winds. So it can be unnerving to many. And when the plane hit, it indeed oscillated. There's lots of evidence for that. This steel is composed of 47 massive core columns and then 240 perimeter columns all around the outside. So we have feature number 7, which is unusual, an uncharacteristic feature in controlled demolition, the lateral ejection of structural steel. 4 and 8-ton structural steel sections ejected laterally, clocked by physicists at 80 miles an hour, landing up to 600 feet away, destroying the winter gardens, impaling themselves in skyscrapers all around the Twin Towers. So what can cause that incredible level of lateral ejection? You can see here that they're freely flying these structural steel sections weighing 4 and 8 tons, including that one, which is about to hit building 7. Back, 2, forward, 2, back, 2. It starts out horizontal, but how does gravity work? Down. What's going on here? Out. Very, very clear. And then gravity begins to take over, and it comes to a 45-degree angle, and eventually a steeper angle. There's enough energy here to hurl a 200-pound cannonball 3 miles. And there's a lot of these cannonballs that were ejected, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them, up to 1,400-foot diameter around the World Trade Center towers, well outside the World Trade Center superblock. And that cannot be explained in a gravitational collapse, nor can the cause of the collapse here, because the steel, 100,000 tons of it, easily a third of the weight of each building, is distributed outside the footprint of the building. So how can it be crushing the building below it? This weight is not available whatsoever to crush the building below. Well, what was crushing that building? Well, maybe it was the concrete. Let's take a look. Feature number 8. We have 110 floors of concrete that we're looking for in this building. Each of them 4 and 8 inches thick, poured over metal decking, supported by lightweight steel trusses. We're looking for this entire assembly, each an acre in size. But in the photos, we don't find 110 floors stacked up like pancakes. We don't find 50. We don't find 10. We don't find 1 acre-sized floor, or a half acre, or a quarter acre, or a 1/16 of an acre of concrete. No, it has been disappeared. Where are the pancakes? This is a real gravitational collapse in Mexico due to earthquake in that case. It's missing. Well, what happens to concrete when you get it over 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit? It can turn to white powder. Could the nanothermite have been sprayed on the bottom of these floor deckings and turned all that concrete to white powder? It's a possibility according to ASTM C856. C856. So where is the
Real quick,
well,
Richard.
Yeah.
Sorry. That nano thermite. Now you said spray. Would that be sprayed before it was built, or?
Well, it was dual layered, so we know it was sprayed. We know it was liquid applied.
Okay.
And we don't have nanothermite available in 1970 when the middle of the construction of these towers. Yeah. So this must have been done, and we'll look at when it could have been done, because there's an opportunity to spray this thermite under the guise of fireproofing, as we'll see. So we're asking, where did the concrete go? Well, we can see right here, it's pulverized in midair. It doesn't even wait till it hits the ground to be broken up into powder. All the photos and videos show 90,000 tons of concrete pulverized to fine particles, 100 micron size particles on average, like baby powder. This is incredible, and spreading laterally throughout lower Manhattan in a blanket 3 inches thick from river to river in a 3 square mile area. So if 90,000 tons of concrete is pulverized and spread over Lower Manhattan, what's crushing the building? It wasn't the steel. It's also outside the footprint. And it's not the concrete. Together, this is 2/3 the weight of the building. Weight that was used by Zdeněk Bezant in his calculations submitted just 2 days before 9/11, trying to prove the theory that ultimately NIST said they came up with. And it remains the key theoretical basis for NIST. And yet, it's been decoded. It took 10 years for engineers to decode this mathematical wizardry. What did they find when they decoded it? That Bezant had doubled the mass up above, using all the concrete and the steel and doubling it. And he reduced the column energy absorption capacity below by a factor of 3. So this calculation was totally rigged in favor of a collapse. And this was challenged. Bezant was challenged by engineers like Tony Zamboti, Richard Johns, Gregory Zudolinski. And they came up with, when they submitted this, the American Society of Civil Engineers won't publish it. Why? They said it's out of scope. So, wait a minute. How is it out of scope to publish a challenge to a previously published paper in that journal? No. So obviously the American Society of Civil Engineers is complicit in this cover-up, as is the American Institute of Architects, who have disabled our ability to go to the AIA conferences and show the architects the collapse of these towers, and that we were not told the truth. We were uninvited from further. We've gone to about a dozen conferences, but ultimately they said our missions are not compatible. That's what they told us. Well, how would you get explosives into these towers or incendiaries like nanothermite? Well, there is liquid applied fireproofing. There was fireproofing upgrades in each tower. They did occur on the very floors that were hit by the planes. So this is certainly a possibility uncovered by Kevin Ryan in digwithin.net, his blog. So we need more research, of course, into this fireproofing upgrade. Who knows that it could have been an undercover operation where we're told it's fireproofing, but it could have been anything other than that in the years leading up to 9/11. How could explosives be placed without the building occupants knowing? Well, we have, in fact, the core columns sitting adjacent to all the elevator shafts. That's how skyscrapers are built. What if the elevators could be used to bring explosives up through these shafts and placed on the core columns and beams in the building? Especially if you have tenants moving around from floor to floor, like we know there were, especially if you only had half the building occupied at the time of 9/11, like many researchers believe is the case. You have lots of opportunity here, but you'd have to get this under the nose of the security operation for the towers, Securicom, Stratosec, who had the contract to provide the security for the buildings, curiously, up till the day of 9/11. And who's sitting on the board of directors of those companies? George Bush's brother and cousin, Marvin Bush and Wirt Walker III. So we have some people we could investigate. Did the 9/11 Commission ask any questions of the security company? No. And it wasn't even mentioned in the 9/11 Commission report. But listen to Scott Forbes, who handled all the computers for a major tenant in the building.
It was probably the week leading up to 9/11. Every morning I'd come in around 7 a.m. and the dust was incredible. It was filthy. It was like the cleaners weren't cleaning. Right where the windows were, there was a sill which enclosed radiators. I was sick to death of the dust which was appearing on the windowsills. It was dirty grey and very, very noticeable in that week leading up to 9/11.
Could the dust have been gypsum board that was cut, 2-inch thick gypsum board around each elevator hoistway to get through the hoistway to access the columns and beams in the building? It's a possibility. And why? We have another source of investigation here. Why would the Port Authority have given one of the largest, most sophisticated elevator modernization programs in history to a small maintenance company, Ace Elevator, with basically only one customer who went bankrupt after 9/11? Yeah, this is documented in Elevator World, March of 2001, the largest elevator modernization in history. And the Ace Elevator employees are unaccountable. They're accounted for and safe. Why? Because they were away from the site that day, attending a meeting, a labor meeting, because there was a dispute. About 50 of them were pulled out to the union meeting to discuss business. Okay, this is adding up to be a very interesting set of possibilities. So we have to ask, what happened to the evidence? 180,000 tons of steel, the largest and most perplexing structural failures in history. The steel is the key to finding out what happened. Well, starting just 2 weeks after 9/11, up to 400 truckloads a day were sent to China for recycling before investigators could get their hands on it and do a proper investigation. This is the illegal destruction of evidence in a crime scene, prompting Bill Manning, editor-in-chief of Fire Engineering magazine, to cry out, "Crucial evidence that could answer many questions is on the slow boat to China," showing an astounding ignorance of government officials to the value of a thorough scientific investigation. The destruction and removal of evidence must stop immediately, but it didn't. And that's another reason why we have so many architects and engineers citing proof of controlled demolition based on the 10 key characteristic features and some very uncharacteristic features also of destruction by explosives. Fire doesn't create any one of these features, let alone all 10 of them. With additional circumstantial evidence and corroborative eyewitness testimony, we have proof of controlled demolition, which has drawn together this incredible band of 3,600 and thousands of others supporting them, some of which appear in the film series 9/11 Crime Scene to Courtroom, which we talked about. And we present this evidence piece by piece. It's going to be 20 hours of episodes. It goes deep, and all before a special grand jury of our virtual grand jurors, which we're inviting all of you to be a part of as you watch each episode and can give us feedback, what we should tell the grand jurors, what we should ask them, who they should subpoena for witnesses. Well, the documentary we already have out is called 9/11 Explosive Evidence Experts Speak Out. You can hear these very experts. You can see the 1 hour, the 2 hour documentary, or this 15-minute documentary narrated by actor Ed Asner, just on Building 7, 15 minutes, all at richardgage911.org. You can purchase the documentary made by Dylan Avery of the engineers and their support for Professor Leroy Hulsey in his finite element analysis study, the study that Building 7 that NIST was tasked with, but which failed miserably. You can download for free and print the brochure of all this evidence, the complete outline of evidence that we've just gone through, and hand it out, mail it out to every architect and engineer you can find, everybody else that you know. We've got to get to the bottom of this, because We have $6.4 trillion in a global war on history that Brown University has uncovered. 800,000 lives, probably more like 1 or 2 million. We have 14 trillion just on the Afghanistan war, the longest war in U.S. history, 20 years long, where we have lost 7,000 soldiers, 30,000 of them taking their own lives since coming back to the U.S. The post 9/11 war is now up to $8 trillion. So why are we looking back at 9/11? Well, we've invaded 2 countries in the Middle East. We've instituted a global war on terror that has bankrupted us. We've lost our civil liberties with the Patriot Act, the Military Commissions Act, the National Defense Authorization Act of 2012, where any of us can be arrested without a right to a lawyer, a trial, a jury. We can be tortured and even assassinated. All of this is legal under their emergency use. And we have Homeland Security, an emerging police state, a surveillance state, where all of our emails, our phone calls, our text messages are systematically swept up and stored in one of the largest buildings in the country in Utah for use against us later. So the truth about 9/11 is really quite dark. And we got to get to the bottom of it. We got to ask ourselves, where do we draw our line in the sand? For me, it was right here after hearing this evidence. And I hope it will be for you too, because otherwise you've got your head in the sand. You're waiting for the next 9/11. You don't quite believe this one was a false flag planned operation under the dynamic problem reaction solution, where they engineer the problem, they manage the public reaction, and they provide their solution. We got to go get these guys before they get us again. We got to go and invade Afghanistan. After all, these terrorists were all Afghanis, right? Wrong. Nor were they Iraqis. They were Saudis, right? Did Osama bin Laden have ties to Saddam Hussein in Iraq? No. No, we've been sold a bill of goods. Iraq had all the oil, and now it is owned by foreign corporations before it was privatized by Saddam Hussein. We have been directing the opium traffic for almost 20 years in Afghanistan, whose profits exceed the oil companies by 4 times, under the direction of the CIA, guarded by U.S. soldiers. So when are you going to speak the truth about 9/11? Well, we're more powerful than we imagine. We might feel like we're really a small domino here, but look what happens when we get organized.
Boom. That was 13 dominoes. If I had 29 dominoes, the last domino would be as tall as the Empire State Building.
And that's what we're up against. The deep state, which has completely infiltrated our government from top to bottom. And we hope that Trump will do something about that. Some of us have our skeptic hats on, saying, okay, I'm not so sure, but there's been some good things that he has done. And we're hoping for a whole lot more. So we got to realize this is not hopeless. We're not trapped in the matrix with agents, demons, and vampire energies. They are trapped in here with us. And we got to wake up and find out who we really are and share this information, because we are a powerful force when we work together. And that's what we're encouraging in the 9/11 Truth Movement. Just tell 2 people about this podcast, share it, and ask them to tell 2 others, and ask them to tell 2 others. All of a sudden, we're taking out the Empire State Building filled with demons, in Washington, D.C., filled with demons. So do your part. I'm trying to do mine, but I don't want to just speak to you guys. You're listening to this podcast. We need to speak to everybody you know. So we're depending on you. So that's what I wanted to bring to your attention tonight, Corey.
Well, thanks so. Oh, you peaced out.
What happened?
I don't know, Richard.
Oh, there he is. Okay. Dude. An Irish goodbye.
Yes, it's throw a flash.
Yeah, just like the bill they saw the
I was like,
building.
all right, Richard, I get it, man. I'll tell two people. Oh, well, thank you for. I mean, that is quite the little presentation, and I'm.
Thank you.
It has taken. How long did it take you to put that together?
18 years.
Yeah. I was about to say it's grown from the first time we had you on. Like that was so in depth and very educational. I mean, I was writing down just little stuff that was very interesting. I mean, it was well done, Richard. That was really well done.
Well, thank you. I hope your audience feels this way too, and that you guys will share it, because it is important that we wake up. We're going to cross-pollinate the other truth movements, the health and freedom movement. The last 3 years we had yet another false flag operation with the false disease and the false solution provided for it. So we talk about that too. We have a whole presentation on the parallels between 9/11 and COVID, because they use the same playbook. So we've been waking up the COVID truth movement to 9/11, and they're going, oh my God, it's worse than I thought.
Yep.
When you first saw the towers collapse, did you take note of the pile drive argument, or did you not really even pay attention to it till a few years later?
No, I was just kind of freaked out. I didn't know what to think about it. I'd never seen a collapse like that. It's not a collapse. The damn building is blowing up, but they're telling us it's a progressive collapse, like right away. and I don't know. I just didn't think about it. I'd never heard any alternative theory before I heard Bonnie Faulkner on KPFA's Guns and Butter in the San Francisco Bay Area. She was interviewing David Ray Griffin about all those 156 first responders. And I'm just blown away hearing this in was it March 29th of 2006. And I'm just going to myself, wow, I got to find out what's going on here. So I went the next day to watch David Ray Griffin, and he was in the Grand Lake Theater in Oakland, and I was late, so I couldn't even get a seat. It was packed, 600 people in there. I had to go home and watch on live stream, which they had only recently started, and I learned how to do pretty quickly. I was just, because I wanted to prove him wrong. I mean, this guy is either telling the hugest lie, or he's telling the truth. And I've been hoodwinked with most all of America and the world. This is the biggest lie, the biggest conspiracy imaginable. And yet I swallowed it. So I got real angry. So I took this information, I started digesting it. I go, my God, this was a big deal. This is on my shoulders. I'm carrying this load. I'm getting angry. I'm getting fearful. I'm going, my God, if this is true, then I could be at risk if I talk about this, but I did it anyway. I got 14 people to come because I bought them pizza in a conference room at our architecture firm in Walnut Creek, California. And all of them, well, most of them thought I was kind of nuts while I was talking about this to them. But when they came and saw the physical evidence graphically, like you just did, they all agreed with me. Oh my God, you're right. These are controlled demolitions. We got to have a real investigation. All the hands went up, and they signed my petition. So we had 15, including myself, architects and engineers demanding a new investigation. We were off and running.
how much evidence was left over? Because you talk about how much they were shipping out on a daily basis. So like those little the pictures you show along the way, like how much evidence was left behind for them to examine?
Well, there were 256 pieces of steel saved, and they all seem to show some of the evidence that you saw in some of that steel, which was documented by Worcester Polytechnic University, Professor Sassoon, document the hot sulfur corrosion attack on the steel, which NIST threw out of their investigation when they took over in 2002.
That's what I'm saying. This NIST, like, what happened to? Is this person still around? Like, is it just a controlled puppet? Like, how do you like to just? I mean, shit your pants on this whole thing, and just to keep. Oh nope, it's right. You guys are wrong. Like, the biggest puppet is this NIST and this NIST report. It's like, I wouldn't be surprised if they just tied this loose corner up and locked this person away. Because I mean, there's the role that he played, or that, you know, the reports there, it's so mind-boggling just how just wrong it seems.
It's a complete cover-up.
Yeah.
Shyam Sunder of NIST was the project leader, and his co-project leader was John Gross, and they both are going to have hell to pay somewhere, sometime. And we're working on getting this through up to the Trump team. Actually, we have Kurt Weldon, former congressman, very angry about all of this. He is collecting all this evidence, which I've just spent 4 weeks formatting into written format, 110 pages long, to go to him, to go to J.D. Vance, Pete Hegseth, and Tulsi Gabbard, who are interested in seeing it. It will become the Task Force 8 of 8 task forces being brought to them, centered around firefighters who are now organized and presenting this evidence to Kurt Weldon, along with myself and along with structural engineers and physicists. So he's going to have a full package, as if they don't have enough on their plate already. These guys, these appointees, once they get confirmed and in, we're told that they will be looking at this material.
It's got to come out. I mean,
in fact, Trump actually promised the declassification of 9/11, along with JFK, MLK, RFK murders.
Yeah, interesting. The one thing I was thinking about with what you talked about with the concrete and stuff and the mushroom cloud, just all that, like, I almost thought, I wrote down, I was like, was that kind of a distraction maybe for the Building 7, you know, to get everybody just so log jammed and so chaotic, running around, not really dialed in, so they could, you know, do their, you know, clean demolition of Building 7. I mean, because that just replaying that in my mind and going over the clips that you showed with just the amount of debris and stuff that came off of the towers. But then you showed that map of where like 7 was just on the outskirts of like the, you know, the cloud and everything from the towers. So I didn't know if maybe that was the play or it was just, I don't know.
Well,
I thought really interested on that.
They wanted us to go to war, and so that was a great motivator.
Yeah.
And then it was convenient. I mean, if we're blowing up the towers, we might as well get rid of 7. You know, I don't.
Yeah.
You know, the State Department is always, whenever they do something that harms the American people, they always also include something convenient in it for them.
Oh yeah, never lose the opportunity to take advantage of a crisis.
Yeah, but I mean, even you know, watching that, like, I'm a sports fan, so I love watching old stadiums get demolished, and that's how they go. They go just like that. You know, it's so even the just most common folk can watch that and be like, I've seen the old Stadium X go down just like that. So you can't tell me that a little office fire, started, that come down of those towers. So that's just me looking from the outside, but it was just chaos. It was pure chaos, and people lost loved ones, and just we were so lost in emotion. So they could, looking back, you could play it that easy, and people aren't really going to look into it because they're more worried about the other stuff that happened. And now, like you said, with COVID and everything else that went on and is going on, everyone like as Corey and I've talked, COVID was the worst thing. It caused massive damage, but it opened up a lot of people's eyes to a lot of the bullshit that the government and everybody was trying to just keep pushing over our eyes. And like you said, it's an awakening. It's happening. It's taking wind. Now with Trump in office, we hope that, we have the right people in place now to get answers, because we all deserve answers.
Yeah, but he just made a big announcement that he's investing $500 billion in the next mRNA-based miracle vaccine to fight cancer. So what's up with that? I mean, he didn't learn his lesson from Warp Speed, apparently. So, we have our skeptic hats on for sure with regard to him. And they're planning the next pandemic. They're trying to get the bird flu off the ground. They tried with monkeypox. They tried with disease X. They kept scaring us with, H1N1. It's one thing or another.
Zika.
And we got Bill Gates saying, oh, the next one will get their attention for sure. What are you trying to tell us?
Yeah.
Anyway, all of that is in my presentation on the parallels between 9/11 and COVID. And we also have the parallels between 9/11 and Gaza. These presentations are on our website, richardgage911.org.
The Bazant guy, the whiz kid that came up with the pile driver theory, has he ever talked to anyone publicly again, or?
He won't talk. No, he doesn't answer responses from the structural engineers at Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, the organization I founded 18 years ago. And now Gail and I are off on our own in the last 3 years. We're going directly to the public, and we've included a broader set of evidence from the COVID arena and Gaza. Gaza, another false flag operation, which Israel encouraged and allowed to happen. And they're being exposed 6 ways from Sunday on that one. And they had to just pass a law. The Knesset just the other day passed a law that says, if you spread information that Gaza wasn't as we told, then you could spend 5 years in jail.
Interesting.
Well, they also passed the anti-Semitic adopting the standards of what anti-Semitism was from I forget what the organization is, but essentially, it makes the Bible illegal. It's absolutely insane the amount of control of free speech that's still going on that, is being guised in ways to help others, but essentially is, even the TikTok thing is a fascinating argument for free speech. Did you ever see people being canceled that had heard what you were sharing with 9/11 and they were sharing it to their firms? Were people getting fired over this? Or?
Some people have been fired over this. In terms of YouTube, I've lost 5 channels that I kept trying to put up. And I wasn't even, the first couple of times I got canceled, my channel got canceled, I was talking about COVID. But the rest of the times, I learned how to self-censor, which is what we're learning with YouTube, very unfortunately. But if we want to reach, millions of people, YouTube is a way to do that, but we have to self-censor if we're going to do that. And even though I did, I still got canceled. So I gave up on YouTube altogether.
Yeah. Man, I forgot about that elevator theory. I know we talked about that the first time, and that that small elevator company taking over such a big project. Like that one still, every time something comes up with Building 7 or the Twin Towers, that my brain always just goes right there to the
Me
elevator.
too. And what's
You know,
fascinating, Otis Elevator, the most famous elevator company in the country, they installed those elevators in the early 70s, and they maintained them for the last, what was it, 50 years or so?
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, this elevator company, Ace Elevator, comes out of nowhere and gets the contract for the largest elevator modernization in the world. And Otis Elevators like kicked out of there. And these guys, they probably weren't even doing an elevator modernization. We have no evidence that they were. The documentation shows old elevator parts, not new ones, in Elevator World of 2000 and March 2001 article. So yeah, it's probably an
would that be
undercover
hard? Would
operation.
they be hard to, or I guess, yeah, if they've dissolved one to subpoena? I know you were saying, you know, trying to get list of people, or companies, whatever, to subpoena. Um, I was wondering with the elevator company, and then with Hayden,
Well, wait there. Hold on, one at a time. They're gone. They've dispersed. They went
that's what I thought.
bankrupt.
Oh yeah,
Maybe we can find them and subpoena the former owner. I don't know. We're
yeah,
certainly going to try. They're on our list.
okay. Yeah, and the other one was it the fire chief Hayden or police
Yeah,
chief Hayden?
fire
Yeah,
chief.
is he still around, still
Yeah,
alive, or
he sure
yeah?
is.
Because
Yeah,
the
he's got
fact
some
that he
questions
didn't
to
give up
answer.
that engineer, didn't give the name up or
Nope,
didn't
he's
want any
anonymous.
problems. Yeah,
They won't tell us the name of that engineer. I don't even know if
yeah,
there was one. They may have made that whole
exactly.
story up.
Yeah.
You said the AIA conferences, they won't even listen to this.
They were forced to listen to it because we took it as a resolution into their business meeting, and we had 5 minutes to present the evidence for Building 7. And they came up with all kinds of lies, such as, "Oh no, we know how that came down. It came down uh, by diesel fires." That's an explanation which NIST abandoned long before then. They're just making up stuff. They have no idea. They haven't really looked into it at all. As I mentioned, they didn't issue one bulletin on this, the third worst structural failure in modern history after the Twin Towers. So we had the resolution was to call for a new investigation, and we got 12% of the members to vote for us, but it's kind of hard to do when you only have 5 minutes to present what I just presented to you in an hour and a half.
And no journal will publish this, or
Well, Journal of Engineering Mechanics actually published one of the challenges to Besant. It didn't attract much attention. There are articles written in journals. This is not a subject that seems to catch fire like it did with me 18 years ago. People's worldview has to be turned around. I mean, I didn't want to hear this when I heard it. I struggled. I fought against it. I said, I got to prove this older gentleman, David Ray Griffin, wrong. That's what I set out to do. And I proved him right inadvertently.
gosh darn it.
Yeah.
Well, and like you said in your video, there's 800,000 people that were affected here. I was just researching this last weekend, from 2001 to present day, with all of the activities we've been involved in militarily, it's close to 10 million between civilians and war casualties off to the side, and the consequences of soldiers coming home. So these attacks, if they were not done by Al Qaeda and they were indeed planned or assisted by our own government, 10 million lives. That's World War One numbers based off a lie.
Yep, it's called slavery in a war system. We're the slaves. We provide the money for their wars, which they profit from enormously and reshape the Middle East in this case, which is the goal of the Project for a New American Century, which established their goals prior to coming into power with George Bush. These dual Israeli citizens, most of them stated their goals, a vast increase in the military budget, the capability to fight and win simultaneous wars, a regional hegemony in the Middle East. But they said in their paper, absent a catalyzing and catastrophic event like a new Pearl Harbor, these goals will likely take a long, long time. Well, Bush writes in his diary that night after 9/11, today we had our new Pearl Harbor.
Oh,
is Ben Affleck going to be in that one, or is that?
I
Damn
haven't
it!
talked to him.
Ugh. George Bush, you bastard.
Well, and the fact that Trump was in power in 2016 and had 4 years to release these documents and hasn't. Of course, Obama, who came in there on change, but didn't want to change that atmosphere.
No.
So it makes it really makes you wonder who was really in control of all of this.
Mm-hmm. Well, we certainly can follow the money. James Corbett did a 1-hour presentation video on this. It's on YouTube. It's called 9/11 Trillions, Follow the Money. So he documents just the beginning of a documentation of the financial gains that were made. Gold heists under the basements in the morning of 9/11. The bonds that were coming due the day of 9/11, money that was borrowed and used to take down the Soviet Union, all of a sudden didn't have to be paid back either. Donald Rumsfeld announcing $2.3 trillion that was not accountable for in the Pentagon budget over the years. And he made that announcement the day before 9/11. And then we have the attack on the Pentagon, which, by the way, was by Hani Hanjour, the pilot, we're told, who failed Cessna flying school. But he's flying this plane that is alleged to have hit the Pentagon in a 270-degree spiral, dropping 8,000 feet per minute, landing right into the office of those auditors who were looking for that $2.3 trillion.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing is with that one, and then the overlay you showed of the fireproofing like upgrades, like exactly where those planes, like that's come on, get out of here. Like it doesn't add up at all. It's
and with hotel demolitions like the ones we see in Vegas, those floors end up stacking on each other, don't they?
Typically, yeah, they don't blow them to dust because dust is the enemy in controlled demolition. You try to contain it so it doesn't go everywhere and you don't get sued. They didn't try to do that at the World Trade Center, though. The dust went. What?
They had to make it look good.
Well, they had to make the floors go away so their cleanup operation was easier. They had to reduce the steel to its original components so that they could ship them more easily away from the site very quickly without everybody seeing the incredible pools of molten metal, which were readily seen.
I mean,
who gave that order to ship it away to China? Who called that?
Well, the FEMA is pointing to the mayor of New York and vice versa, and it's kind of a quagmire. I don't really know. We certainly want to subpoena them find out how that happened. It pissed off a lot of people, not just the Fire Engineering Magazine chief editor, but Bill Manning, but many other people, like the top fire protection engineer in the country, Glenn Corbett, was screaming about this. Congressmen were having hearings on the shipment of the steel and what happened and where did it go. This is borderline illegal. One congressman screams out.
I mean, every step of the way as you're finding out this information, you probably just had to take a moment because it begins to just it begins not only to seem like a orchestrated attack, but like the logistics were thought out. Logistics were thought out in advance. Like, we got to figure out how we're going to do cleanup. I mean, that's now. Would there have been any in any of these buildings? Are they like somewhat prepped so that when the time comes for demolition, or like because the towers had been hit before in '93, there was a bombing in the basement. Was there any type of discussion of like, hey, if there is a terrorist attack, instead of having these buildings fall onto half of the city, we should install something so that it can just fall within its own footprint?
Well, that's kind of a myth that's kind of running around, but no insurance company would insure a building that was laced with explosives. No high-rise architect has ever come out and acknowledged that they're doing this. I've never heard of such a thing in the industry. It's just so unlikely. Plus, the explosives degrade after a few years. The military has to replace their explosives. They don't last forever.
Would there be in the design of some of these skyscrapers the realization that within a certain time they're going to want to get rid of these buildings, so they it's made with that thought in mind as well?
No, that doesn't happen. They empty the people out of the buildings. They prepare the steel, pre-cut it so it falls faster, and then they take it down with explosives that are fresh charges. That it's a lot of work, and that's how they typically do it. But if you have to do it surreptitiously, you would be moving tenants around floor by floor, preparing all of that, and then covering it up with gypsum board so that nobody sees or finds it. But you'd have to do that in the year before 9/11. That elevator modernization was occurring the 9 months prior to 9/11, interestingly.
And with the you said it was approved, the contract was approved by Port Authority, correct? Like, who was in charge of Port Authority at that time?
There is a name and I have forgotten it. But that authority was transferred. Well, the property was transferred to Larry Silverstein and company. He only invested about 15 million of his own money, and he leveraged that to 125 million. Then they leveraged that to 3.2 billion, the purchase price, which gave him a 99-year lease, and the clause of which said, if anything happens to this building, we don't we get full control of it. In other words, it's no longer a lease; we own it. And the terrorist insurance that he added to it ended up giving him $5.68 billion.
Lucky Larry.
Yeah. Once again, he was supposed to be in a dermatology. Excuse me. He was supposed to be in a breakfast meeting, which he had every day, up at the top of the towers, the North Tower, and but his wife made him go to a dermatology appointment that particular day. He'd never missed these morning breakfasts.
It's good she was looking out for him.
He's very.
I mean, that stinks right there.
Blaming the wife.
Yeah.
Well, and congratulations, Richard.
Thanks
on having this taken all the way up to the top.
Yeah, we hope it gets into the Trump team. That's right. We worked really hard on that paper. So Kurt Weldon, former congressman, we're now depending on him, blessing him, and he's got the energy. Trust me. You can see the interview that we did of him. It's on our website, richardgage911.org, and he's on fire. He's taking this all the way to the top.
Well, Richard, anything else you want to mention before we let you go here for the evening? We kept you for 2 hours.
Be sure to share the Phantom Facts podcast, you guys. This is probably the most important one that you guys have had.
Nope, I agree.
And we've got to get the information out, and it's digestible, in an hour and a half. You don't have to play them all of this discussion afterward. Just give them the guts of it and share it with everybody.
Richard, thank you so much for coming on the show. Tell Gail thank you for letting us take you for a couple hours tonight. So and for being willing to go on anybody's podcast to discuss this. There's a lot of people that are happy to put everything behind a paywall or want payment for showing up, and I think it just speaks to how honestly you have attacked this problem and what you've
How much he
uncovered in your
cares.
process. And like you said, if we see the army coming and we're the watchmen on the tower and we say nothing, then blood is on our hands. And with this, there's 10 million people that are dead from this incident. It inspired a horrible set of events that has lasted 25 years. And it's still going on, all because of this. And so, it is very, very important. So once again, Richard, thank you again so much for coming on the show.
Oh, thanks, Corey. Thanks, Constant. Awesome to be here with you guys for sure. I'm honored.
Richard Gage, everybody. Thank you so much, Richard, for coming on the show. 2 hours. And I feel like I could just go through each one of those slides, and spend 10 minutes on each one of them.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree.
Do you have to get going, or
no, we're good.
Time to chit chat.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's take a media timeout. Take a little breather, stretch, refill our drinks, and we'll play a little of the Jim Croce while we do that.
Well, I had just got out from the county prison doing 90-day for non-support. Tried to find me an executive position, but no matter how smooth I talk, they wouldn't listen to the fact that I was genius. The man said we got all that we can use. Now I got them steadily depressing, low down mind messing, working at the car wash blue.
Well, I shouldn't be sitting in a half-conditioned office in a swivel chair, talking some trash to the secretary, saying, yeah, Papa, come on over here. But standing stuck, pimp, rubbing these fenders with a rag, and walking home in socky old shoes. But with them steadily depressing, low down mind messing, working at the car wash blue.
You know, a man of my ability, he should be smoking on a big cigar.
But till I get myself straight, I guess I'll just have to wait in my rubber suit of rubber these cars.
Well, all I can do is to shake my head. You might not believe that it's true.
Oh, working at the St. John Niagara Falls, there's a undiscovered Howard Cruise. So baby,
don't expect to see me with no double martini in my highbrow society news. Cause I got them steadily depressing, low down mind messing, working at the car wash food. Bible martini and in my highbrow society news. Cause I got them steadily depressing, low down mind messing, working at the car wash blues. Yeah, I got them steadily depressing, low down mind messing, working at the car wash blues.
Oh, we're back. We're back. We're back. Late night edition on the Phantom Sack Society show. We're
Turn the volume down and make sure your parents can't hear it.
yes. Don't let the boomers hear this conversation. They'll be very upset.
I feel bad. I mean, no, I don't feel bad, but I was gonna ask Richard. I said, I was thinking, I was like, you started this journey with hair. Now you've ended it with no hair. The tax on this.
Have you ever done work for an engineer's house?
No.
I have 5 times, and I remember each time very distinctly, because wiring an engineer's house is, I mean, you'll meet these people and they're the nicest people, but when they design their own house, it is designed to spec.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it's one of the most detailed orient. I'll give you an example. We wired this one engineer's house. His mother was aging, and so he wanted to install an elevator for her to be able to easily go between floors. And so he kept making adjustments to this house, dude. Updating the specs, all this stuff. His 3 years into building this house, his mom dies.
Oh.
So then they have to just abandon the elevator plans, and so there's just these huge gargantuan closets.
You should have kept the elevator.
5 years into this house, dude, his wife comes in and she is bawling and she is begging our company, please, can you just be done with it? 5 years into building a 3-story house.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, when Richard Gage comes on the show and says he has spent 18 years studying 3 buildings,
yeah,
I know the type of anal behavior that is behind that. This is not me, Phantom Facts, where I find maybe 20 decent links and 10 good clips, right? This is a guy that goes out and finds purchase orders.
Yeah. And
and finds, I mean, it's crazy the amount of research. And now
he did top down. I mean, that whole team, like I said, this second time around, it was night and day different from the first time when we had him on. I mean, this was just a well-oiled machine. I mean, they were both great. I loved the first time we had him on. The second time, I mean, just all of that just soaking in. And it just sucks too, because it's like all those facts, everything right there, that is bulletproof, that is buttoned up nicely. And will it get taken serious? I hope to God it does. But it's I was gonna say, with the new age, with all the old slimy lizards that are dying and getting out of Congress, and hopefully with the new younger people getting in, that we're strongly impacted, 9/11 and everything, that maybe eventually by the time before we die, the shit'll actually come out because it mattered. A lot of these old crusty fucks, it doesn't matter to them. They either made money off of it or knew somebody that did, or just don't care, So I really hope this catches legs and does something really good.
Well, and I think back to the JFK generation and the slow build up of realizing that there was a conspiracy behind it, because I don't think it reminds me very similar to 9/11, the JFK assassination, right? Because it's a pivot point in American history.
Yeah.
JFK gets assassinated, pivot point. 9/11 happens, pivot point. And American reaction is very similar. There's united front. There's national mourning. Everyone on TV that saw it, it was a shared event. You know, if you were in middle of nowhere, Iowa, if you were, you know, in bustling New York, you guys shared a moment.
Yeah.
You had nothing else in common, but you both felt that. I
You
remember
know,
my grandma talking about it. I remember my mom talking about my grandma talking about it. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, it was a pivotal moment to people in the middle of nowhere, South Dakota, that literally lived in a town of 50 people. And 9/11 had the exact same effect. It united everyone, and that, and you know, it lasted for, I think, a lot longer. You know, it started to break apart after we went to Iraq. You know, but it wasn't. It was still holding its weight for quite some time.
Yeah.
And it makes me, you know, it makes me wonder just a little bit. Makes me wonder just, you know, just a little bit if the Kennedy generation had access to sites like Twitter and Facebook and all, you know, all these different social media apps. Because the beauty of the Kennedy assassination was you got to see it. It got replayed on the news, and then it was never played again.
Nope. Newspapers wrote about it for a little bit, and then it just disappeared. On to the next thing.
Well, it wasn't like you forgot Kennedy. They used it.
Yeah.
They used it for their benefit when they needed to pull it out. That's why they glorified him. A true hero. Let's name all our buildings after him so we can remind you constantly that commies tried to kill or killed your president. Perhaps. He loved the commies, though. We know that. Doesn't that sound familiar? Like whenever a news story breaks, you know, some shooter, and like, you know, immediately if it's someone who's struggling with their identity, gender identity, because no one will talk about it. It's not talked about. And so you know it because with every other shooter, every detail is spelled out within 15 minutes. Oh,
Yeah,
and especially
actually,
if he was a Trumper.
yeah. We just had a school shooting here in Nashville today. I don't know what details and stuff have come out. So I know it was some like 17-year-old African American kid, but I haven't heard anything about the manifesto or, you know, what was the point of it all. But
I only heard he
think,
killed one person.
yeah. Yeah,
So
and then
was it just
I
like
guess
a lover's duel being transcribed as a school shooting? I mean, it's a shooting inside a school, but there's trigger words being used right there. Are they trying to trigger that thought that it's a school shooting? I mean, of course it's scary.
Yeah. I don't know.
Because
Like I said, I haven't seen anything besides the little clip that came across Twitter, talking about, I think, how he killed himself or whatever, but I don't know.
did you
yeah.
not you did nothing on the radio, huh?
No. But I mean, I spent all day inside today, really, not really. I mean, so I haven't been dialed in, plugged in to, you know, I'm sure tomorrow when I get back to work and everything else, I'm sure it'll be talked about and probably more information will come out. So
I'd be curious to see what X is. I'm sure it's already figured out on X.
yeah.
Yeah,
I was too busy, you know, spending $15,000 on a new HVAC unit system in my house. So yeah. So if you want to,
well, at least it's in payments, right?
yeah. But God damn it. We came home and it was 22 degrees in the house.
Oh.
Yeah. With it being like 1 degree, 0, -2 here.
Well, at
So
least you don't have to worry about that for the next 10 years.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's probably the same amount of time for the payments.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Next time, call Poppy. Okay, you'll call Poppy. All right. I'm an electrician, which means I am a god of all trades.
That's right.
So,
You know,
just
I usually do. That's just the crazy thing is just with everything else going on, I didn't even think about it. And I was just trying to make sure we had all the kids in the bed last night. Like,
man, that's
you know,
horrible.
yeah,
I
yeah, it
apologize.
was
You
so.
know, I definitely wasn't going to ream you out for not investigating a school shooting in your very own town, but
Yeah.
that makes sense now. That makes sense.
Yeah. I mean,
Dude,
I
look.
think we bought every space heater at Walmart. So, I mean,
Oh, well, oh no. At what point did the thought come to you, like, I'll just light this house on fire and I'll be warm and get insurance money?
yeah. Yeah,
Several times.
exactly.
Several times. Hey, I found some clips from Richard's Twitter that I wanted to
Mhm.
play. Are you down?
Yeah.
There.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know who Dick Gregory is?
No.
All right. That's
My
horrible.
name is Dick Gregory, and I just want to say thank you. Thank you. Thank you. What a wonderful gathering. I see a lot of the original suspects there. But again, thank you. And many of us feel your pain. You know, you're very important because it just can't wash you off like you laying in bed one day and had a dream. I feel the pain here with people who have information, but what you're doing is very needed. But going on a 2-year fast of nothing but liquids, and just ask folks around the world that tune in every day at 12 o'clock where you are, and just pray and meditate that the truth come out. Now, the CIA can manipulate a whole lot of stuff, but they can't manipulate the Big Dipper and the Milky Way. And there is a universal force that put this whole piece together that can't be manipulated. And so I will tune in and ask people to tune in, and I will also tune in to you all's success. And again, I just say thank you. And if you want information on what we're doing, I'll be back in the back. And you agents that's here, it's going to cost you $30 to get it.
Thank you, Dick. We're honored to have you.
So who
Dick,
is that?
okay, so Dick Gregory was a comedian, but during his early years, he worked very closely and was friends with Martin Luther King Jr.
Okay.
He was jailed in Birmingham, Alabama in '63. He wrote that he had received the first really good beating I'd ever had in my life. But the reason why I think it's interesting that he's talking to Richard here is because this is a guy that knows who killed Martin Luther King Jr. And no doubt when he saw 9/11 and this footage, he put 2 and 2 together. I mean, what? The Bush company owned the safety teams in both towers? The security detail?
Yeah, the cousin and the brother. Yeah. Yeah.
Why? Why do I keep hearing their names? Like, God
They're all
damn.
tied to it. And then, like you said, the Saudi Arabia, I think Devin brought it up when we talked about it the first time, how they tracked the prince or somebody's flight from, into New York and out of New York. It was like the only flight that was able to leave, during that whole thing,
Yes.
I mean, like it follow the money, but I love that, CIA can't interfere with the Big Dipper and the Milky Way, like
Yeah.
they can mind fucking manipulate everything else, but that, that's just
And just
things.
for the doubters, although I think the people on the right are beginning to really wake up to the corruption within the law enforcement, all the way up to federal law enforcement. And there, because what was done to Trump the last 4 years, which was, we as Americans know is all illegal, like, a lot of the stuff they did, because they can't do it to us,
Yeah.
or at least we thought. they couldn't. And so we're realizing a lot of this stuff. But No Agenda has this belief that the FBI has a 6-week cycle. And so every 6 weeks, they try to drum up a little coverage about themselves and make themselves feel special. And they've tracked this over 17 years. And give or take a week or two, it's pretty spot on. And there's this one clip. I got
dedicated Constitution supporting professionals. It will tell you that the FBI, has foiled about 17 plots to kill Americans during the past 10 years. What it will not tell you is that there have been 20 foiled plots, and of them, 3 were interrupted by members of the public. The 17 that were interrupted by the feds were created by the feds. We all remember the 3 that were foiled by diligent Americans: the shoe bomber, the underwear bomber, and the Times Square bomber. In all of these cases, the crimes charged were those of attempting to kill and conspiring with others to do so. In all 3 of those cases, alert Americans on transcontinental flights or in the streets of New York City told authorities of bizarre behavior or actually subdued the threats themselves. There was no foiling by the FBI. The plotters were, thankfully, bumbling fools who had poorly planned their criminal behavior and who ended up harming no one. All 3 are serving life terms. But the more curious cases are the remaining 17, for which the federal government has taken credit. They all have a common and reprehensible thread. They were planned, plotted, controlled, and carried out by the federal government itself. In all of these 17 cases, from the Fort Dix 6 to the Lackawanna 7 to the Portland parade bomber, the feds found young men of Muslim backgrounds, loners who were bitter at America. They befriended them, cajoled them, and persuaded them that they could change the world by killing Americans. In all these cases, agents worked undercover and portrayed themselves to the targets as Arabs of like un-American mind. In some cases, the federal agents used third parties to act as middlemen. The third parties were typically persons who had been convicted of crimes and who, in return for leniency at their own sentencings, were willing to work with the same feds who prosecuted them in order to help the feds entrap whomever else those feds were pursuing. Thus, in all 17 of these cases, because of the command and control of federal agents, no one was ever in danger, no one was harmed, no bomb went off, and no property was damaged. But in all those cases, the losers whom the feds targeted each believed that they were interacting with real plotters who would bring them cash and bombs. As we know, sometimes the cash arrived, but the bombs never did. The defendants were essentially charged and convicted for playing a game with federal agents. The most recent of those
What's that from?
I think that's from Twitter. Check Phantom Society Twitter feed. You'll find a link to it. Forget, I'm horrible podcast.
Can you not change it to Phantom Fact Society on Twitter or no?
I mean, Phantom Society sounds nice when you're handing out a handle, don't you think?
Yeah. Okay. I see that.
And then the true followers, like Richard Gage, knows that it's Phantom Fact Society.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, Maynard. Anyway,
it's interesting.
What?
No, just the FBI, how they just, anything they can just seem relevant, fucking just play stupid games. Damn. It's not surprising by any means, but what I was going to say earlier when we were talking about JFK and 9/11, the thing I noticed, I love watching TV shows and dramas and stuff. Shit ton of stuff about JFK, and like just the crazy what ifs and blah blah blah. Some really good ones out there. Not one fucking anything about 9/11. I mean, they had the World Trade Center with Nicolas Cage and whatnot, but like that was it. There was usually Hollywood eats that shit up and wants you to spin it 18 different ways just to get your creative minds and whatnot flowing. And I just think about it now. I'm like, that's kind of interesting where it's like, Hulu had a great thing on JFK and whatnot. That was James Franco, I think, is that the older Franco? I think whatever.
Yeah, yeah. I
He's in
remember
that.
seeing it.
Um,
Yeah.
but nothing like, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm making a big deal of nothing,
No,
but
that's an
usually,
interesting observation. There's no conspiracy movie about the towers.
yeah,
Although with the
it's-
JFK, like when was the how soon was the first conspiracy movie made about JFK? It could have been pretty relatively quickly after the movie was made, but
yeah, I
it
don't
does
know.
seem there was some time there to let it breathe for a minute. It'll be
Yeah, but
interesting because RFK. I mean, dude, we got to talk about the election, the inauguration.
yeah.
I mean, any thoughts? What's I mean, hey, I'll play a couple.
As a first step toward restoring.
This is from his victory rally the night before his.
As a first step toward restoring transparency and accountability to government, we will also reverse the overclassification of government documents, and in the coming days, we are going to make public remaining records relating to the assassinations of President John F. Kennedy, his brother Robert Kennedy, as well as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and other topics of great public interest. It's all going to be released, Uncle Sam.
I mean, he marched on that once already, and not squat came of it. So
yeah, but he's done a lot of stuff in his. I mean, I don't know if you've paid attention at all, but he signed over 200 executive orders his first day in front of everyone. Probably some of the best TV you can get right now is Trump talking to the press, because he is not holding anything back. Won't stop calling the election rigged, which I find hilarious. You could definitely tell leading up, like probably the last quarter leading up to the election, there was a heavy push of him, of his advisors saying, "Hey man, let's just not bring it up. You
yeah,
know, let's just not bring up the election. We know, but let's just not bring it up because it's iffy to some people. No, they're wrong. Of course, they're wrong, sir." And he did. He held it back, but at that victory rally and from that point onward, rigged. Rigged said maybe 100 times each day by
oh,
Donald
nice.
Trump. He's loving it. It's wonderful. Anytime he can slip it in. He's this never would have happened in Ukraine. It wasn't for the. I'm not supposed to say it, but it was rigged. The election was rigged. We'll show it. Anyway, he designated any Mexican drug cartel as a terrorist organization.
Oh, okay.
And then the reporter asked him, does that, allow the military to do military strikes in Mexico? And he said, yes, if we have to. She goes, well, how does the Mexican government feel about that? He goes, I don't know. You should ask them. It's so nice. In the last 3 days.
He's like, I'm going to end up buying it anyways. That in Canada. This is
Last
gonna be...
3 days, he has done more press conferences than Biden did in 4 years.
Yeah. What's the deal with Biden? I thought you couldn't give pardons out to people that weren't guilty. Or can you just give a pardon out, just free blanket for protection for anything to come, or to what? I mean, he gave them out like fucking hotcakes. Fauci, his whole family, like just Fauci. None of these people besides his son have been indicted, on anything. So how can you just hand out these pardons?
And the stuff coming out about his son is just absolutely. I mean, they're showing pictures now of him with all these underage girls, doing lines of coke.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous what's coming out with him. But yeah, how do you just absolutely clear a whole committee, investigation committee.
Exactly.
How does that work?
Yeah. It was so that I had to step away. I was like, that doesn't make any sense to me. How are you like? How is that right? How is that? What is that? It didn't make any sense.
Look at what Andrew. Did you see what Andrew Schultz said?
Uh-oh.
I'll show you here. Let me pull this up here.
Was it your home, not mine?
That's what but Fauci took the pardon. Fauci could say, I don't want the pardon. I don't think I did anything wrong. But he took the pardon.
I don't blame anybody for taking the pardon.
I do, because now you're guilty. Because there are a lot of people that were on the January 6th committee that were offered a pardon, and they said no. They're like, I did my job. I was supposed to investigate this. I did what I was supposed to do. I don't want the pardon.
If you're Fauci, you're not taking a pardon?
What's in my arm, yo?
Was it your home, not mine?
That's what I'm saying. What's in my arm, yo? Why are you taking a pardon? What's in my arm, yo?
Okay.
What's in my arm?
I'm taking that part. I don't give a fuck.
If I put some shit in my arm, you're not allowed to get pardoned. You told me I need to put some shit in my arm. Now you can't go get pardoned. You gotta hold the weight of that decision. That's your job. What's in my arm, yo?
I mean,
what's about to come out?
You ain't wrong. Like it looks a suspect. It definitely looks crazy suspect. Yeah. I
think it's because they lied about knowing it was a man-made virus, knowing it came from China, whatever. They were lying about the origins of it. That's what my first thought. Could be the vaccine too, but I tend to think they covered up when they knew where it was from.
You lie about one thing, you lie about the other. All of a sudden, you got to keep lying to keep up the lie. There's a lot of lies going on. What's in my arm, man?
You ain't lying.
I know, right? Well, and this, I mean, does make you a little nervous.
Yeah.
When the guy told you to do all this stuff, just gets a free pardon.
Yeah. And like you said, I mean, some of the J6 committee didn't take it because they felt they were doing their job. But for Fauci to take it, and, you know, that is scary because what is about to come out, you know?
Well, and then there's, like you mentioned, the constitutionality of some of this, and I stumbled across. Oh, here. Well, let's take a little break and find out
about how I wipe my Outback area. I figured a little fatty 101. So yes, I'm in my bathroom. I'm currently sitting on the toilet. And yeah, your question is slightly valid, so I will give it some attention. But yes, a woman my size does struggle with wiping their butt. Do I walk around 24/7 with dingle?
First of all,
God damn it.
First of all, thank you. Thank you, B-Juice. B-Juices. Oh no, that's a comment. This is damn 599 to damn she's fine. So she's at 599 pounds, but she's getting to damn is fine. Damn,
who makes the toilet? I want to invest in that company. Who is that? A Kohler? Is that American made? Who makes the toilet?
You know it's American made, bud.
Or American Standard, whatever the company. Like, I mean, that porcelain throne is either screaming for its life or it's just well built.
Is she sitting straight on porcelain?
I don't see crane straps attached to her, so I don't know. I don't know what she would be sitting on.
Listen, we gotta support 599 to damn.
We don't.
If she's trying to lose the weight, right? Like, I mean, if she's trying to lose it, she's doing this so that you know that she's embarrassed by it, and she's trying to fix herself. You know,
Okay, sure.
and let's be honest, I'm curious as to how you wipe your butt. I'm genuinely
bidet.
curious.
You don't even attempt to reach your alligator arm back there. You just shoot hot water on it and you just, I don't know, because the bidet we have in our bathroom shoots water, shoots air. I mean, you can get it wet, you can get it dry. I mean,
First of all, May, this is not someone that lives in the high upper 1% like you do. As you can see by her hair, she's clearly in a 1-bedroom apartment. So you can't
we bought
expect
the
her to
bidet
have a
off of
bidet.
Amazon.
You
I mean,
can't expect to have a bidet. Let's find out how she wipes her butt. Christ.
Berries. No, I do not. I have things in my life at my size that assist me in my daily living. One of those things is a wand. I do have a bathroom wand that helps me wipe my ass. I actually saw these for the first time when I was watching Little.
the fuck? A wand?
Is there?
At least she's not. She doesn't go into the living room and scoot across the rug like a dog with worms.
Oh, excuse me. I thought there was a hose attached to this at first. I thought like it was tapped into the water line, but this is not tapped. I don't think it is.
Maybe she loads it from the sink from the bottom.
I didn't watch the whole video. I stopped it here because I thought this would be a great one for us all to learn together, right? So we get to dive into this together. You and me, May. Trauma body.
I'm so glad I'm here.
So I didn't need one. I was not nearly 600 pounds. But when wiping started becoming more of an issue at my size as I grew close to 600 pounds, I remembered that this was used back in the day on those episodes. So this is a fanware brand. It's on Amazon. I'll put it on my Amazon storefront because you know what? Like, I know this video is probably going to get a lot of fucking hate comments, but at the end of the day, if I can help someone who's my size or bigger or someone any size that struggles with the reach, however you want to reach, and you wipe your ass, frown, and then you stick it in the groove, and then you reach however you want to reach, and you wipe your ass. And then this is like spring loaded. So if you spring and you're in the toilet, this falls off. Because the spring kicks out the toilet paper.
The fuck?
Is this dildo modded out to wipe out fat women?
That's what it looks like. Can you buy that on Adam and Eve?
Amazon, evidently.
Yeah.
Cheaper.
Goodness.
I am just sitting on the toilet fully clothed. I'm not currently pooping.
Thank God.
Yeah, I have a wand.
I was disappointed. I wanted to see the clump of poo.
I want to see her struggle getting the turd napkin off of there, and she's having to reach it. Oh, what is this? Oh,
I don't even know. Oh, it's got a case.
Collapsible. It's got a bag. It's got
a case. What is it with cases? You ever notice that? Like they'll come home from their shopping spree and they'll be like, and it has a case.
Yeah.
Don't you just love this case? This bag it comes in.
It matches. It's accent.
It does match too. You notice that? We got
maybe it's so it doesn't take up space. I don't know. You reposted that.
Well, yeah. How else am I going to save these things? You got. Oh, here it is. Here's the law. It says right here regarding the pardoning power of the president. This will not, of course, include persons born in. This is with not pardoning. God damn it! This is completely different. This is with the birthright thing. So he signed an executive order saying that even if you're here in the United States and you give birth, but your homeland is a different country, your kid doesn't get to be American.
Oh shit.
Yeah, and there's a fight going on that will eventually make its way to the Supreme Court, I'm sure. But it says this will not, of course, and this is the constitutional argument for it. I forget what year this is here. This will not, of course, include persons born in the United States who are foreigners, aliens, who belong to families of ambassadors or foreign ministers, accredited to the government of the United States, but will include every other class of persons. It settles the great question of citizenship and removes all doubt as to what persons are or are not citizens of the United States. This has long been the great disaratum of the jurisprudence and legislation of this country. So it's saying here that Trump can do it, essentially, but it's going to be argued in court as far as if it will hold or not. So that was another executive order he signed of the 200.
I don't think that one will take.
Well, no, but I don't think it will either. And he may very well drop it too. But I think right now it's being used as a message to stop everyone that's coming on these immigration trains. It's over, right?
Yeah.
Stop. Even if you just got here, you're going to give birth to a baby. Those people might not even make it in here, permanently. And I think that's the message he wants to send, to just stop it so that we have a second to breathe here.
No, I think you're 100% right. Yeah, it's to deter and to keep it at bay. So
right, and then it'll lose in court, or or it'll be delayed a long time in court, and then by the time it gets to a decision being made, you could very well remove the executive order, or
well, I heard you don't even. Well, I heard you can sign them, but you can. Doesn't even mean if you sign them, you don't have to do anything with them. Like you can sign, I guess, because it was something with the TikTok thing I was hearing about with Trump, where he signed to ban TikTok, and Biden just let it sit there until the very end, and then enacted it to get it into play. So you're right. I mean, he could sign it and just keep it there, collecting dust to kind of just give it a scare tactic, being like, listen, you got to calm this the fuck down. We need to secure our borders and get us healthy and right from the inside, which I'm hoping it works.
Well, and even if it's stopping the bleeding, people don't realize, was it like 10 million people now have come across in 4 years? It's a ridiculous amount.
Yeah,
10 million is too much for our economy to handle. With no jobs in manufacturing as it is. And I understand we're going to have to fire up some plants and start building stuff, and we're going to need cheap labor to do it. But I think we got everyone. I mean, we can't be having gangs. Some of these people want to run paramilitary operations inside of towns, and the towns are okay with it. They won't prosecute them. The people that I've lived in those towns and or by those towns in Colorado and so forth. It's they vote in these public defenders that not public defenders, but prosecutors that won't go after anything but political activists. Trump also released 1,600 January 6 people that were
saw that.
So that's a win.
What about the Bitcoin guy or Ross?
Ross Ulbricht.
Yeah.
Yep, he got released today. So Spike was pretty happy about that as well. No, there's dude, he just sat there for probably an hour, and there was a guy that had an envelope, and he'd be like, "This, Mr. President, authorizes the use of the military against the drug cartel." He's like, "Ooh, that's a good one." And then he'd sign it, and then someone would ask him a question, and then he'd talk about it for 5 minutes, and then he'd give it back to the guy, and the guy would be like, this Mr. President, and they'd be like, and then and he'd go on for another 5 minutes, and then he's like, all right, what do we got here? He's like, and this right here, Mr. President, is, authorization to whatever. It was so many different ones, dude, and he, what happens to the pen that signs bills and executive orders, right? That's like the most coveted item.
Oh yeah.
And especially among politicians, they all watch. Who does he give the pen to? Who does he give the pen to? And after he was done signing, he threw them all into the audience.
Oh, really?
It was the coolest moment, dude. Like, they belonged to the people that got him into office, was, how I interpreted the gesture.
Yeah.
But
all the reporters and shit just got one?
no, into the crowd of people that came for his inauguration that were
invitees
of him. Yeah, that were invitees of him.
The crowd, the invitee crowd, like Theo Vaughn, Jake Paul, like just a random assortment of human beings that were there for.
Jennifer Guskin got invited.
Yeah.
Remember her? We had her on our. She was invited to the inauguration.
Yeah, I wonder how that works. How you I get it if you're like a celebrity and stuff, and like you're on that, you're on that side. I'm sure it's easy, but like just a random, like how she's not random. She's got a story and everything, but like, it was crazy. Just the cast of people that were there.
Mark or General Milley. You remember hearing him get the pardon as well? Do you know what he's been accused of?
No.
Well, I didn't know either until the Blaze got on top of it last night.
You keep coming up with these scoops regarding January 6th. Do you have anything else that's coming up?
Yeah, pay very close attention to probably. I thought it was going to be out today, but we got a couple little things we got to clean up on a new article. And we know for a fact now that General Mark Milley, who was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff back under the previous Trump administration, we know that in June of 2020, during the riots in the Summer of Love here in D.C., he actually directed and ordered and authorized the use of both heat and sound directed energy weapons to be used against the protesters in that event.
May.
Shit.
You should have told me the video wasn't playing.
Oh, I thought you were just doing that for just audio.
Right. If they're set to sub-audible, it can depend on which switch is used. It being a series off of that first article that will lead us to January 6th as well.
Which just what heat and sound, which would do what?
Well, there depends upon which switch is used. It depends. If they are using sound energy weapons, they can be super audible or they can be sub-audible. If they're set to super audible, that's supposed to scare people away from a riot. If they're set to sub-audible, it can make people go crazy in their head and force them into violence. They call those agitation weapons.
What the fuck?
So I'm going to go back and I'm going to rewind about 10 minutes.
So back in the summer of 2020, before the riots, is that where they recruited people and used these mind control weapons on? Is that where the dude with the horns came from?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Where all the characters came from? There's a $50 billion lawsuit against the U.S. government by the January 6th committee, or by the January 6th people that were imprisoned.
Good.
Yes.
I saw the one dude was, I think he was going after the Arkansas FBI because they took like all his guns, they took everything, and they won't give it back. And Liberty, I think he's attacking Liberty Safe because Liberty gave
the
FBI the codes and everything to get into it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, and not only that, I mean, they said that over 50%. I can't remember. It was higher than 50% though of the people that were turned in by family members.
Wild. What the fuck? That's what, we had that conversation of like, you can't, like, it's, cutting ties with family and stuff. That is your 100% reason. Sometimes you gotta.
It was their kids, dude. They're 16-year-old kids.
Oh, it was their kids?
Yeah.
Really?
What do you do there?
How does that even happen? How is this 16-year-old kid informed? Well, I guess the news, but damn.
Propaganda through school.
Yeah.
Of course, maybe their counselor encouraged them. You don't know. You don't know, dude. That it's not on there. Of course, these poor kids have been abused by the school system, by the pharmaceutical companies, by their parents. All right, let's move on. This is a trumpet.
Think about ordering U.S. Special Forces into Mexico to take them out.
Could happen. Stranger things have happened.
Mr. President,
And that was actually
sure that Maduro would accept Venezuelans.
Say it.
How will you make sure that Maduro will accept Venezuelans?
Well, we're going to see in Venezuela. We're looking at.
Think about ordering U.S. Special Forces into Mexico to take them out.
Could happen. Stranger things have happened.
I've heard a lot of people though in the military that were like in the special forces and whatnot saying that fight with the cartel, their technology and shit that they have, a lot of them is it's not to be laughed at. It would be a massive battle. Like it wouldn't just be a walk in the park to take out those cartels. Like there would be serious life loss. Just I guess with a lot of these cartels and stuff, with the amount of money and stuff they have, they can get their hands on as good as technology as we have, and whatnot. So that would be a crazy fight. If it's true.
I mean, the orders are signed. I don't see why. They know where everyone's at. Why couldn't you just drop bombs on them from 60,000 feet? Honestly, why can't you just do that?
Well, then you got you're going to kill innocent people and blah, blah, blah. But if that's what the price is to cut the head off of the snake, it's not like if you don't, kill the whole bloodline, if they're going to grow up and still do it, because it's just, that's a part of it, so you got to do it all means necessary to end it, to take back control.
Well, and also Catherine Herridge, she is a pretty successful independent journalist. On the eve of Trump's inauguration, has been posting since that point, has been posting from Guantanamo Bay.
Yeah, I saw you sent me the thing. I didn't get a chance to see what it was all about. So fill me in, I guess.
Well, no, there's nothing's being allowed to come out of there yet.
Oh.
But she is sitting out there, and she's, I think the reason why she's gotten this gig is because of her working on the
we knew that the
Biden laptop.
In our investigation, we knew that the laptop was real. DOJ knew that the laptop was real.
FBI knew the laptop was real.
Yes.
Based on the notes of this October 2020 meeting, the FBI and IRS, when did they know the laptop was real?
It was many months before October 2020. We were confirming certain aspects of it, that it was real and legitimate as far back as late 2019.
Why was the Hunter Biden laptop reporting suppressed in October of 2020?
There was various reporting of people saying that it's potentially Russian disinformation. And one of those people is the current Secretary of State. His name was in a lot of the emails that were turned over to the House Ways and Means Committee that were on Hunter Biden's laptop.
I mean, it was clear that it was a campaign to discredit that information before an election. Ultimately, I guess you can conclude that it was for the purpose of affecting that election.
When you heard dozens of former intelligence officials say the laptop had the classic earmarks of a Russian information operation, you knew that was false.
Yeah, and I mean, as a special agent, as a criminal investigator, and what I know, what I do, I don't know how they could have come to that conclusion regarding this laptop.
It was misinformation to try to make something else look like misinformation.
So this woman's out here in Guantanamo Bay this weekend, and I just can't believe it's for recreation purposes.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
That makes sense now because I didn't know who she was. So interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Well, and there's this belief that there's been using the FISA court secret trials planned for treason for some of these people for the actions against the U.S. government. And I think that's playing into it. But, you know, she is reputable. So hey, we talk about this, though, too, about this. And I was talking to someone else about this as well, is that there's just a huge wave of misinformation coming out right now on everywhere. It's just fake for no reason, stuff for no reason. It was like the old days when they would say someone was dead in the comments. Just reporting Arnold Schwarzenegger has passed away. You know, and then everyone would leave to Google it.
Mm-hmm.
It's that same type of mentality, but, you know, just with news. Serious stuff.
Wonder why? What would be the play there?
Well, we talked about, you know, the whole getting trust back into the institutions.
Oh, yep. Mm-hmm.
So do you think like maybe they're pushing out as many false narratives as they can? And then somehow the institutions save everyone, or, you know, somehow they have to reestablish their credibility, right?
You would think, but damn, that's tricky because I think some of them you might be able to, but I don't know. I really don't know on that one.
Well, I mean, it's documented that the FBI had infiltrated several churches and organizations just to monitor situations and report back, and these were like 30-year-long missions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's I don't find it odd that they would just jump onto the content creator bandwagon. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just push out. I mean, that one chick we played for Richard Gage too at the beginning.
Sarah.
I mean, she just screams psyop.
Anybody doing anything.
No, and actually, Al Qaeda makes a joke out of the fact that they move the money we give to the Taliban to the.
Dude, this is just a memorized narrative. You can tell. Like, it's just been slowly propagated to her, and she feels confident because it's the CIA, and they tell her this, whoever her boss is, and her boss is getting information from his boss, and, you know, and she's just some little, you know, Sarah Adams, I'm sure, believes she is of relevance, but if she's spouting off shit like this, she's dumb.
Yeah.
And because she believes it. She 100% believes this. And you don't get someone to believe something without feeding them a little bit of truth.
Yeah, 100%.
You know? So she knows some stuff. I'm not saying she's an ignorant. I'm not saying that. But how the truth is being manipulated to somehow form this narrative.
The Building 7 conspiracy stuff, fascinating. And they have actually had discussions about how we could do ruses and bring in the Building 7 people to make them blame their government more. So they're actually even
to make them blame their government more. That same tone I heard so many times when I was door knocking with women, and they'd always use that really, tone to back up something that wasn't really scripturally backable, and it drives me insane. And I'm sorry, but I recognize that tone. It is a tone of someone who's just not even hearing what they're saying. You know what I mean? They don't even hear what they're saying. For some reason, that didn't mute your mic at all. I don't know why is that bad?
Oh, really?
Yeah. Are you on your computer mic? I bet
I
you are. You are a little bit echoey. Go to your settings real quick. I guarantee you've been on your computer mic.
Oh, yep.
This whole time, huh?
Hey, there he is, the illustrious voice of May Massacre, or Constance, as your new name is.
Yeah, Constance.
How you doing, Constance?
I see how you changed yours to I like that.
Well,
Instead of Jesus. It's
yeah,
more professional.
we're trying to attract a larger crowd to some of this stuff. Usually when we're talking about the death of 10 million people, I try to class it up a little bit. I
Yeah.
kept the KC hat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I do like the other day you were talking about how you were a big Twins fan, just wearing that KC hat, and I was like, I love it because I'm a Royals fan. So,
Royals are a special place in my heart, dude. That 2014, 2015, 2 seasons. We were going through a transition, so I didn't really have anyone to root for, and I love underdog teams, and so I started following them that first year, and they just had I love scrappy baseball
Oh
teams,
yeah,
low market, because it gives me hope that the Twins will someday rise again from the ashes and win a World Series. But the Royal, and I sort of live vicariously through other teams to enjoy that dopamine hit. And so the Royals, man, when they lost to the Giants,
oh god,
and to Madison Baumgartner, which was, one of the most amazing pitching performances in our lifetime.
Yeah.
But hated him for it. Absolutely despised Joe Buck's coverage and love. And his wife was concerned about an affair with Madison Baumgartner that Joe Buck had.
Yeah.
It was that bad.
No, yeah, I remember.
But then to have them come back, they got rid of I think 2 guys that were beloved in the lineup, but they made changes. They made not huge, just a little, and they came back and they won the World Series. It was a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And
it was tough to see like Billy Butler, certain players go where it was like, damn, man, like he was it for a minute.
Favorite, yeah. But here's the thing: they won the world. They came back and they got their goal.
Yeah.
That's a cool story because you don't see many teams do a repeat after they lost the first one.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and that damn Bruce Bochy fucking Giants team. Yeah. And just the run, the next year going through, the teams they had to face and then the Mets at the end, I felt a lot more confident going against the Mets that year than I did fucking Madison fuckface. So
well, and the Giants, that was a little short, really nice dynasty.
Yeah.
That
the odd year Kings.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not discussed too much. I'm messing around here. It's not it's not really discussed too much, but they did. Was it 3? They won 3 of them.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, every other year on the odd years.
I was trying to see if there was any other little nuggets I wanted to give you.
What's Elon? What's the fallout from Vic and Elon? Now it's just Elon running Doge.
No fallout. Vivek's running for governor.
Oh, okay. Okay, because I saw I sent you the TikTok. I don't know if Devin sent it to you or not, but I guess Elon is just it was some sports edition where he was just cutting all this wasted fat of just like you'll have to watch the TikTok. I found it pretty hilarious, but it was just like, you know,
Was it real?
I think so.
You send me a lot of fake stuff.
I
That's
know. I know.
just has nothing to it other than just silliness, which I love the silliness. But I keep waiting. I keep waiting. Oh, huh. Live report from Kansas City. Actual footage of Patrick Mahomes getting ready for the playoffs here.
Ooh, yeah.
It's really intimate. Oh.
Give it to me. They just had another baby. I mean, I don't remember what they named it, but I know the one kid's name is like Bronze. I don't understand why celebrities do that. Why the fuck do you name your children something not real? Like, what's wrong with Adam, Steve, Corey, Chris, Matt, Patrick? You had to name your kid, fucking Bronze Mahomes and Trinity Hope, and just why the fuck are we doing that?
Yeah, it's interesting. Who started that trend? Was it Beyonce?
Yeah, probably. Well, Blue Ivy.
I feel like Blue Ivy was the first really weird name, wasn't it?
I don't know. Does Madonna have any kids? I'm sure she probably started it.
You know what? Didn't Michael Jackson have a bunch of weirdos for kids?
Oh yeah.
Weirdo names.
Blanket. I think Paris is one of them. Yeah.
I just remember being a kid and seeing that and thinking, that's weird.
Yeah.
I didn't even necessarily think it was wrong. I just thought it was weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway. All right. Anything else you want to bring up before we call it a night? It's 11.
No, this is great. This is a nice long run.
Yeah, it was a good little show.
But you've been putting in some hours, my guy. You have been pounding the pavement. I want to give you a big shout out. Doing a heavy lifting. So
thank you. I appreciate that. We
talk about any of that real quick?
Say what now?
You want to talk about any of this shit that you've been doing lately?
Project Constitution, and I have been dabbling around with some live streams, as you guys can see on our live feedback there on YouTube. And there's just a lot of stuff going on with Trump. It was one of a time situation, as far as everything that was going on. And Project Constitution, I don't know if you've seen any of his stuff or followed him, but he puts together really good little periodicals that are just amazing and real good breakdown. And they're always sort of like a little sidebar quest that leaves you, dwelling on it for a couple hours.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, so if you have an X account, follow Project Constitution. But we're talking about doing shows Sunday evenings. Doing a show. I don't think Project has a significant other, and so I've got to slowly train him that I do, and they have needs. I can't just feed them like a dog and expect them to be happy. You got to cuddle, got to watch movies together.
Maybe cut her into an episode on Sunday.
We're readapting the style a little bit, but I think at the same time, like, she doesn't want to stand talking to me with a microphone in front of her face. I think
tell her to get on and she can look at me. We can make eye contact.
I think she wants show. I think she wants. Okay. All right. But no. So, look out for those live streams, especially on X,
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of great content coming out right now with X and Project Constitution. He's got a bunch of good stuff too. So anyway, Yeah, so I would say look out Sunday evening, and two, I'm after our show's done, we're taking live call-ins. So people want to talk or vent, anything like that, I will send them a link. But anyway, that is it for Fan and Facts. You got anything else for me there, buddy?
Nope, that's it.
All
Sweet
right.
dreams.
See you next Wednesday, 8:00.
This is the emergency broadcast system. This is not a test. Repeat, this is not a test. This is our fire safety following steps. If exposed, remove
Podcast for the curious mind. I don't know what that means.